February 12th, and this is a study session of the Minnetonka City Council, and we'll start with introductions. I can't see you, but I assume Ms. Donovan, you're on.
I am. Miranda Dahman, Assistant City Manager.
Hello, Eric Nilsson, City Attorney.
Sarissa Saraki, Senior Management Coordinator.
Peter Leatherman, Morris Leatherman. Peter Leatherman, Morris Leatherman Company.
Mike Fung, City Manager.
Kimberly Wilburn, City Council at large.
Patsy Foster Bolton, Ward 1.
Kizzy Copley, City Council Member, Ward 4.
Paula Ramele, City Council, Ward 3. Deb Calvert, City Council at large, Seat A.
Will Manchester, Public Works Director.
Phil Olson, City Engineer.
Blake Hansen, Three Rivers Park District Project Manager.
Josh Bovey, Three Rivers Park District Senior Manager of Engineering.
Danny McCullough, Three Rivers Park District Planning.
Do we want to do the back row?
Yeah, we'll do it tonight, Rebecca.
Okay.
Just long Assistant City Engineer. Oak Carlson, Superintendent, Three Rivers Park District.
Okay, does that cover it?
Have a few more.
I don't even know, is it
Oh.
on? It says it's red, it's not on.
Okay, and appearing virtually is Rebecca Shack, Mayor. I'm gonna ask, for some reason the camera is not operating great tonight, so I can't really see much of the people's feet. I'm going to ask Acting Mayor Patsy Foster Bolton just to help call on people if necessary, when we're having discussions. Otherwise, I think I'm gonna handle on the agenda. So we'll get right into it, and first item is the 2026 Community Survey Review. And Mike, are you gonna kick that off?
Thanks, Mayor Shack. We'll have Sarissa Saraki kick it off, and then if I have anything to add, I will.
Excellent. Sarissa?
Thanks, Mike. We have Peter Leatherman here from Morris Leatherman Company. He'll do most of the talking for this agenda item, but just for council, a few things to note. The survey is currently sitting at 164 questions. We are looking to get that number lowered to around 115 for questions. And staff has been working on removing some of those questions that are not needed anymore. Potential topics that were listed in your packet, those are some items that came from you from last year or from staff. And then recommended removing themes. Those are questions we can add in next year if we do feel the need to. We don't need to ask every question every year, and Peter can talk about that as well. And then recommended keeping themes from 2025. You just have short-term rentals listed. Peter will be here for any questions you may have, any other topics you want to bring up. that's all I have to say. Mike, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, thank you. Rebecca, if I can, thank you, Sarissa.
Go for it, yeah.
Yep, thank you. Just quickly for the council, as I connected with you throughout today, just tonight's exercise is to really solicit feedback from you and any input, as Sarissa mentioned, for questions that are going to go into this survey. We do this every spring, as you know, for the last almost 30 years of surveys. Mr. Leatherman's been instrumental in that process, and the company that he's worked with, we've had a close working relationship with him over time. What was new to you as council a couple years ago, we invited Peter to come here, because otherwise it had been more staff-driven on the questions. And so we wanted to make sure you had an opportunity as well. If there's things, I say things, topics, that you're interested in learning about, we would want to hear that from you tonight. So really tonight's exercise is to a quick review of our process. We have Peter here to help engage in the conversation, provide some direction, and if there's specific questions or topics you want to explore, we're here to, again, hear that from you. So with that, if it's okay, Mayor, I just turn it over to perhaps Peter at this point for any other introductory comments, and then turn it back over to you, Council, for that feedback.
Excellent, thank you. Thank you, Peter. You take it away.
Very good. It's a pleasure to be here with you for the annual survey markup. Oh, I didn't turn it on. Technology impaired. It's a pleasure to be here with you to discuss this annual survey. And last year when I was here, we added a fair number of topics. I forgot to print out. Could you make the screen big? There we go, that. We added questions on e-bikes, on leaf blowers, all of those sorts of things. And in talking with staff, you know, to try to shrink the survey a bit, it might be something to consider what we did probably 15 years ago when the survey got to 200, 220 questions, is to kind of look at the questions of, you know, what are the core questions, and then like policy type questions. Unless something has changed fundamentally in the community, there's been a lot of discussion, just say about chemicals on lawns. Maybe it's something to explore. But with no major event, it's unlikely that public opinion will have moved drastically, that we need to track it on an annual basis. So if you kind of look through the lens of what's immediate, what's on the docket for 2026, that you want to test. And then I know that we'll have to have a discussion about the sales tax, local option sales tax you're exploring, to kind of understand what questions we want to put in the survey to elicit feedback as you look towards that. Does that make sense? So do we want to kick off on potential new topics? Actually, should we just talk sales tax right now? Yeah. So where does that sit? Last year, the questions we had in we asked about 6 items: upgrade to city fire stations, adding parks and amenities to Opus, renovations at the community center, renovations to Williston Fitness, renovations to the March, and expansion of city trails. We asked folks, though, if you recall, not whether you support or oppose, do you have a preference of a sales tax versus property tax, and then they had the option to say neither, so they didn't support the project. So I think this time, since you're looking at the local sales tax option, and we've done this in many communities, we'll want to test the individual, because however many items you have on the list requires a vote, even though the half-cent doesn't expand. It's just a communications challenge with the community.
Yeah. Can I just ask, so are those gonna be I assume then, the projects, the new projects that we're looking, you know, the updated projects that we're gonna have are gonna be for this year, correct? I think that's what I saw, right?
Correct.
Yes.
So with the recent action of the city of approving the resolution with those 5 more specific targets, we'd want to shape the questions around that, to what you're saying. Yes. So confirm what you're saying. Yes.
Okay.
That's the answer. I think one of the things where this will be valuable too is, again, getting that community feedback on each of those 5 core areas that would be in the sales tax. And that information will be valuable for all of us, especially if the legislature does approve the city's request and if the city goes out to referendum. Understanding where the community's temperature is on those will also largely shape the order of the questions that are asked and the strategy around the marketing and the community informational aspect of it.
Yeah, we did the same thing in Bloomington when they started exploring theirs and the priorities. They had the ice garden and the wellness center. But we have to, as the local sales tax, it's not just do you support all of the local sales tax option. Because of the nature of having the individual vote, we do need to break out each one individually and explain, and I've got the language for it, you are authorizing the half-cent sales tax for question one, and then as it's framed, if you're just listening, but we clarify it, you could potentially, if you're testing 5 projects, people might think they're adding on a half-cent for every single project. So I have specific verbiage so people understand exactly how it works on the ballot in Minnesota when you're looking at that.
And just one more follow-up, if I could, on that. I noticed in the survey, the way that was done, I think last year, and what we're looking at is you asked if they approved of a local sales tax and got their feedback on that, and then asked, if you knew that 60, whatever,
Yeah,
60,
yeah.
with that, I'm just kind of, from a methodological standpoint, what's the advantage of doing that versus explaining first that a sales tax would, because then you're.
Great question.
Okay.
It is. Because you don't, the goal of a survey is to find out what the person is at without any additional information. You can't make the assumption that everybody will hear that, 54% would come from residents outside the community. And you do this whenever you're talking elected officials. You see bad polls, they push polls. Here's all this information, what do you think now? But you have to understand what they think, and then you can test, okay, does this make you more likely, or does this impact your potential decision? So that's the goal, is to not have the survey be, because people can come back and say, well, you tried to win the survey, and we have no intention of doing that. But as long as you understand where they're at first, then you can see how specific pieces of information can impact their opinion.
Thank you. Thank
Yep.
you for that explanation. I appreciate that.
Do I have to say something? Can we keep going?
Yep, absolutely.
Oh, sorry, Rebecca.
Yep.
If you would just help Rebecca.
Okay.
All right, anything else on regarding the sales tax piece? Is that?
I'll work with the city with those questions if you're comfortable, and I also would recommend, not only we tested where the tax revenue is coming from, but we've also tested a couple other arguments in other communities that I can put in for review that have been effective arguments, Golden Valley, Bloomington.
Right. Anybody else have anything on that piece of it? Otherwise, do we just go down that list? So new residents is the next thing on our list?
Yes, and that I think came up from last year, discussion of understanding why people were moving to Minnetonka. What was drawing them in and where were they coming from? And so, I mean, I would suggest if you do want to explore that, it's just a question up front. I probably would limit it to the last people that have moved in the last 10 years. Somebody who's been here 25, 30 years, it might be interesting. You're gonna have people that have always been here. So, I mean, if there is interest potentially, it's always when you add questions, is it interesting, useful, and kind of look at it through that lens. And potentially, Woodbury did this, asked about where folks were coming from during their growth explosion in the 90s. And it really was interesting, especially when you looked at those that came from St. Paul and those that came from other locations, and how they valued neighborhoods and how they looked at cities was fundamentally different. But that was Woodbury trying to manage the growth that became Woodbury from the 90s to say 2010. So I'm more than happy to put those questions in for you to look at for a draft if you're interested still.
Are people interested in that?
Well, so I have a question and a comment, I guess. So my question is.
Go ahead.
Do we know, like, percentage-wise, like, what percentage of new residents are normally polled in the?
Great question. In 5 years or newer residents in last year's survey were 28%. If we go to 10 years, it's 47%, half the community.
So I guess my thoughts on this are, it's an interesting question and it might be interesting to get results. I'm not sure, like, if we're trying to limit our real estate questions, that maybe that this is necessarily one for this particular poll.
Other perspectives? Anybody?
Deb.
Rebecca, so I've been so interested since I went door knocking this summer. If it's people with children, I'd be so interested to know if they are sending their kids to the school district associated with their address, or if they're open enrolling them somewhere. I think we have some school districts that are experiencing large growth and other, Hopkins specifically has lost 2,400 resident students, basically to Minnetonka predominantly. And, but 70% or thereabouts of Minnetonka residents live in Hopkins School District. So I just think that would be such an interesting, like, if they're new residents, are they just coming to be closer to Minnetonka School District, or are they enrolling their kids in Hopkins? I think it would be such an interesting.
That we might be able to capture simply by we already asked, do they have kids? Do they attend the Minnetonka School District, the Hopkins School District, or do they go elsewhere? And then the database that the random samples pulled from, just like we track in the community the wards. Nobody knows what ward. The database has the ward. It also has the school district. So they wouldn't even have to tell me that they're open enrolling their child. They could just say, hey, I'm sending my kid to Minnetonka, and then by coding the data, I could say, hey, you actually live in the Hopkins School District.
I'd be so interested, because I really do feel like we have to keep all of our school districts strong. The large numbers of open enrollment are causing different issues in Minnetonka School District and other issues in Hopkins School District, but it is causing issues. Some of it's traffic, and, that affects the city, and some of it's really just like real estate prices, or that may affect the city, and so on and so forth. So I just think it'd be so interesting.
Okay, so we've got kind of two questions on the table here. So we have the question about where new residents, where did they live previously? Just kind of, is that something, is that appealing to people? Do you guys want to add that or no? Let's kind of test the water on that one.
You know me, I'm a more data person. I'm a bad person to ask to take questions out. I'm an add questions person, so.
Rebecca, I think, I'm sorry, Patsy, if I can. I would just add, I think with these questions, my suggestion and recommendation is try to think about, yes, it's interesting data, but what would you do with the data? So I think if you're going to capture the data, you'd want to have a reason to do something with it. So just keep that in mind as you frame up the questions.
Paul?
Yeah, I would say that in talking about where did people live previously, unless we're gonna, poll them on, what do you think about walkability and all of those things in terms, because it's not gonna really, I don't know that it would be affecting any of our policies or work as a city. Again, kind of one of those interesting things to go, and maybe it's on the list of things that we park on the side and alternate in at some point in the future. But I'm not, unless there's something that somebody can think of that is going to directly influence, some sort of,
Funding or
development.
policy.
Yeah, funding, policy, smart growth, whatever, or smart development, and, parks, and we already get through the parks and all of that through other questions, so I'm just not sure. So I personally, I would, kind of vote in the nice to know, interesting to know, but not probably necessary, and if we're looking to cut questions, that's one that I think could be cut and parked on the side.
I mean, what did Woodbury do with it that was helpful?
They were still undeveloped.
Oh, so long ago.
They were still undeveloped then, right? They
Yeah,
were-
I mean, I think it led to some of the development decisions, especially with, I mean, in the 90s, there were so many cornfields and everything. As they planned development, I think to the point of walkability, those sorts of things, it impacted those decisions because of what residents. They had a huge number of people coming from St. Paul who wanted, yes. And so, yeah, moving to the suburbs, but I still want to be able to walk to a restaurant, walk to, all of those sorts of things. So I think it impacted a lot of the development decisions they made, especially to the eastern edge of Woodbury as they developed towards the river.
Okay, so I think, I'm gonna just say, I agree with kind of Paula's perspective. I think it's fascinating. I just don't know that it moves the needle when we look at the survey. So my inclination would be to kind of skip that one, those for now, and consider them. I think the school district one's interesting too for the school districts. But that's not our role necessarily. So anybody else have a different perspective that they wanna, otherwise let's keep this moving. We got a long agenda here.
Yeah. Okay.
You good with that?
Yep.
You want to go to the,
So tax questions, is that, do we wanna talk about that?
Tax questions.
32?
Yes.
So the 32 is, 32 is a follow-up to 31, where we asked, would you favor or oppose increase in your city property taxes if it were needed to maintain city services? If they said they oppose, we asked them, what services would you be willing to see cut, since you're opposed to a property tax to maintain? So I think the question was brought up last year, and we had 18% say nothing, cut the waste, and that sort of thing. So perhaps it really wasn't all that helpful. And you do have, it's probably enough just to capture, you had 80% that said they support a property tax increase to maintain. And we continue to see that in our city surveys and the statewide that we do. When you ask folks, do you support a property tax increase to maintain, they know it costs more. And so they support. Do you support a property tax increase to enhance or improve? No. That's the impact of the property tax hostility that we're seeing across the state over the last couple years. So
Anybody, go ahead, Peter.
I was just going to say, if it's not useful at this point, because there is a big consensus, it's really a low-hanging fruit question to cut.
Anybody feel strongly on that one?
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that it's not, I'm just concerned, my only concern would be, are we gonna get accused of not seeking resident input if we take it out by some segments of our residents? That you're not
Like asking what?
You're not asking this, and you're deliberately not asking this, where this has been a long-term question. That would be, and I just open that up as, I agree that it could be cut because it's not giving us new stuff. It's more as an avenue for public feedback.
I think when these questions were developed in the 90s, and back in the 90s and even up until the recession, 2008, 2009, people were opposed to if they opposed a property tax increase, they didn't care if it was to maintain or expand or enhance. The general realization that people have that everything costs more to have the same thing is really a new it's not a new, since 2008 moving forward. So in the 90s, this would be more 45, 45, 10. And then you're following up with the opposed and you have a cell size of 200. When you have 14%, it's 55 people in the sample. So if 18% say cut waste, that's 10 people or 11 people. It's just the nature of how this question has evolved really has limited the ability to analyze what 55 people.
I sort of agree with Paula on this one. I do, because I think about the conversations that we have on the dais, and if we are not asking people how they feel about their taxation, we're not asking them, and it feels uncomfortable for me to go on the dais and talk about, we surveyed hundreds of people, and, the vast majority said that they would support higher property taxes to maintain, gives us a certain amount of ammunition or cover or rationale for moving forward just to maintain. And one of the reasons I feel that way is because our levy increases have been significant, and they are going to continue to be significant. And there are additional budgetary pressures that are happening because of things that are happening at the federal level, at the state level, and just in the economy, even as an outgrowth of federal immigration enforcement activity here, that I feel is going to put additional pressure on us when we're making the decision. It's a quick question. I don't find the answers about, cutting waste helpful at all, but it is good for us to know what the temperature. That gives us just a basic temperature, and I think that's helpful to me.
Okay, it sounds like there's not an appetite to kind of stick with that one maybe for this year.
Okay.
Okay, so in an effort to, Peter, do you have anything you want to weigh in, or should I run through quickly these items on our staff report that we may want to cut?
Why don't you run through the list for time?
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so we have on that list e-bikes, organized garbage collection, chemicals on lawns, noise from leaf blowers, overnight street parking, storage of garbage and recycling cans, and programming for teenagers. So I would say if somebody wants to make a quick pitch to keep any of those, let's do it now. Otherwise, I think these are all things we've talked about over the past few years that aren't on our upcoming radars here. Anybody?
I do have, sorry. One thing is, the only thing I thought about was e-bikes, because that's one of our legislative awareness topics. And if we need to use that in terms of our anything that we're trying to do at the state legislature in the next, this year or the following year before the next survey goes out, that would be my one thing that I was thinking about, would be the reason, because it seems to be something that's gathering steam.
So potentially keep e-bikes on?
That would be, yeah, for that reason, because it is something that we've flagged as a state legislative awareness to our reps.
That's fair. Yeah. Kizzy?
I would want to make a pitch for the teen program. I know that we've done a lot for teens, but as our city continues to diversify, I still want to make sure that we keep that on our radar to provide programs and for lower income families that come to Minnetonka. So I still want to make sure we keep that on the radar.
Okay. All right, do we feel, anybody feel strongly on those two? I mean, I hear what you're saying, I don't oppose keeping them on. We're keeping on short-term rentals, I think that staff indicated that would be recommended, I think we probably all agree with that.
I agree with that.
So, anything else? Otherwise, the discussion question is, are there additional topics or themes the council would like to incorporate into the survey? Is there anything else?
So the immigration impacts,
Oh, I skipped that one, I apologize.
yeah, it's kind of a big one.
What would those mean? And what would the
So
questions
the
be?
Airbnb VR.
Yeah. Peter, what would the questions be
Your
for the
immigration
immigration
impacts.
impacts?
That's a question to ask. I mean, it's one of those items that if you ask specific policy on, there will be an expectation that you do something about it. And do you have the ability to do something about it? You could ask a general question on their feelings about it. It's going to be, I have a statewide in the field that started today. I had to wait. It was initially going to happen the first week of January.
Oh, boy.
And with the events, I finally just had to put it in because I need the date. I'll be presenting it to MAMA on the 26th and to other acronyms in March. I'll have a general baseline of how people feel about it, but I don't know the specifics you would think about asking your residents as it relates to the city. And the other question is, well, with the supposed news today that the intention is to pull out, by the time the survey's in the field, the issue may be hopefully moot.
I mean, I think the challenge in my review of that was the same thing. I mean, I think we understand the impact of the chaos. To drill down to a more specific question about that we could influence with is the challenge that I have, but I'm happy to hear from others on that one.
I would say, we know that people are being impacted, and we're getting emails from people. We have, obviously that's not a scientific survey, but my question is, what a question, I can't think of a question that we could ask, get the information, and have an action item, act on that information. So, and I don't know, if you could just ask a general question, but yeah, again, I don't know what we do with that data once we collect it.
I mean, we do ask upfront, what's the most serious issue facing the community? And it's open-ended, and they can tell us anything. So they have the ability to bring it up at that point right away. Deb, did you have your hand raised?
I did.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's all right, Paula. So to that question, one thing that I'm hearing a lot from the community, and especially certain people in the community, is that they feel that people aren't calling the police, Minnetonka Police, because we've had decreased, contact, and yet there's not been at least anecdotally, a significant decrease in activity. And I'm being told anecdotally by some people who are involved in kind of dealing with this, it's because people aren't calling, because they aren't aware that, of police response, or, that they don't feel like it's gonna do any good, for some people at least, and so therefore, that's not being called. So that would be one, actionable thing, is how is our communication, how are people getting that message? So that would be a response to that, but I understand your concern.
I really like the way, just asking such a broad question that people could broach the subject themselves, and I think, if that was really what was important to them, and maybe that's just I think another question would be, by the time you do the survey, which is not right away, but soon, if ICE was their issue, have they seen a decrease in activity, or do since Operation Metro Surge started, do you feel safer today when we're surveying you than you did, a month ago or something? That might also be a way to sort of gauge the general temperature, because I have managed expectations about how much it's going to subside, and I also think that it's going to subside for a time and probably have an increase again in the fall. And so, I think just asking if people are feeling safer, or a question about, do you feel less safe in your community because of it, or...
We do have the baseline of how, if they felt safe last year, the year before. Maybe, potentially, would be a question of everything that's happened in the last couple months. Has it impacted you going out in the community or being involved in the community?
I think that would be
Yeah,
a great
that's a question.
Or something like that, just kind of that sort of impact. It's not a, I'm for it, I'm against it. Keep it non-political, but just on a personal level. Has this impacted your household?
I think that gives us data we could actually use that could be helpful in the work that we're doing too, potentially.
Okay.
So,
I'll put
all right, great. All right, have we covered what we need to for this portion?
I think the only other thing I normally ask, are there any other topics that were missed?
Dangerous question.
I know. Last year it got us leaf blowers and all the other ones that we just took out. So.
We're good.
All right.
Are we good?
We're
I
good.
think we're feeling pretty good. As always, we appreciate your expertise and assistance in this. And looking forward to seeing you, come April?
End of April, I believe. Yep.
Okay, excellent. We'll see you then.
Very
Have a
good.
spring.
Thank you. Hopefully.
All right, moving on, we have Three Rivers Park District update, Bryant Lake and Eagle Lake Regional Trails. And who am I taking it to, Will or Mike?
Yeah, thank you, Rebecca. Let's kick it over to Will and probably reintroduce our guests here this evening.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. Three Rivers is here tonight. I'll let them do their formal introductions, but we've got Danny, Blake, Josh, and Bo from Three Rivers. They're going to talk about two of the major trail projects they're working on that are also on the top of the city's trail improvement plan on Baker Road. And so I'll turn it over to Danny, and we'll let them do their intros and kind of kick it off.
Thank you. I'm Danny McCullough. Like I said, with Three Rivers, I work in the planning department. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay. So I work in the planning department. I was very involved in the long-range plan for this project. And here tonight to give you a brief background of how we got to where we are today, which is the closing construction of the regional trail in the city. If you look at this map, it's oriented the wrong way. It's oriented east and west, but this is a north-south trail through the city of Minnetonka and through 3 other cities as well. So this corridor starts in Maple Grove, goes through Plymouth, into Minnetonka, and down into Eden Prairie. In Minnetonka, the Bryant Lake Regional Trail will go down Baker Road and Roland Road. The Eagle Lake Regional Trail will come down Hopkins Crossroads through Plymouth and over to Plymouth Road through Minnetonka and through Ridgedale Center. So when we did this plan, we called it the Eagle Lake Bryant Lake Regional Trail Long Range Plan. And like I said, it connects 4 cities. And the trail corridor itself is 16 miles approximately in length. We wrote the one plan for both trails, knowing that we would divide the corridor up into the Eagle Lake Regional Trail and the Bryant Lake Regional Trail, both of which we're here to talk to you about tonight. And all this really started back in 2019. We partnered with the cities in the West Metro and did what was called a West Metro Trail Study, where we went out into the public and asked a lot of questions about trail corridors in this area. We did public engagement and long-range planning in 2020 and 21. And then, with all of our regional trails, once we have a long-range plan and we go to construct the trail, it's the responsibility of the park district to fully fund and execute and build that trail. So we're fully responsible for the development of it. And this next slide that I have before you is a little more detailed about where we got to today, which is almost to construction. So I mentioned the West Metro Trail Study in 2019. We attended a lot of public events. We had over 2,000 project website visits. We got a lot of feedback about the need for a support for a north-south regional trail in this area. So in 2020 and 21, we worked with your park commission, we worked with your city council, we worked with your staff, and we did a lot of public engagement. We sent out postcards to people along the corridor, and we received overwhelming positive feedback from the community in support of a future trail project in this area. In 2021, the City Council, Three Rivers and Met Council approved the plan, and in 2022, we were awarded with a $5.5 million federal grant for construction of the Bryant Lake Regional Trail and $3.1 million for the Eagle Lake Regional Trail. And that takes us to where we are today, 2025, and for the next two to 3 years. We're working through engineering now, developing agreements for the future regional trail, with construction scheduled sometime in 2027 and into 2028. And then I brought a couple of slides here just showing what our regional trail will look like. Most of you are probably familiar with our system, but I wanted to share these examples in case there are some newer council members here since I was last before you and maybe aren't as familiar with our system, but we typically construct a 10-foot wide paved regional trail with some clear zones on each side, and this is a typical example of what those look like. The one on the upper left is a typical trail through a park, and then the bottom you see a trail along a residential area with a boulevard, and then there's a picture on the right there of our regional trail back up against the backup curve and a roadway. And those are very typical, that's very typical of how our trail system looks. The next slide just shows some of the amenities we have along the trail. You've probably seen our kiosk as you drive around or bike around or walk around our system. We provide typically benches, bike racks, bicycle repair stations where they make sense. We put those in as well. So a lot of amenities along the way to help trail users. Just want to talk a little bit about some other next steps we have other than construction. At some point this year, we'll be coming back before the council to enter what we call a cooperative trail agreement. And this will be an agreement with the city that basically gives us the right to own and operate the trail in our city. And that agreement will include a map of the route. It'll outline property rights, design, construction details. It'll also mention who's responsible for the operation and maintenance of the regional trail, which is primarily Three Rivers. It'll include some easement and permit language, and it'll also define allowable uses such as walking, biking, skating. And then it'll also acknowledge our cross-jurisdictional enforcement of ordinances between our police and your city police. And then the agreement will also establish any minor details or for any projects that the city might have that might be connected to our greater trail project or might be going on in conjunction that might overlap. And then now I'm going to hand this over to our engineer, Josh Bovee, and he's going to talk a little bit more about the details of this upcoming construction project.
Thanks, Danny. Once again, I'm Josh Bovee, Senior Manager of Engineering, Interim Director of Design for the Park District. I'm leading the Bryant Lake project. So, as Danny said, it goes along Baker Road. So, it's about 3.7 miles long. It's on the west side of Baker Road between Minnetonka Boulevard, going south to Excelsior. At Excelsior Boulevard, we switch to the east side of Baker Road, between Excelsior to Roland, and then along Roland we're on the north side of the roadway until we get into Lone Lake Park, where we continue through the park along an existing gravel trail into the Bryant Lake Regional Park. So some of the design initiatives we're taking is to minimize the impacts. So we are narrowing up the roadway and shoulders to try to keep the trail entirely within the county and city right-of-ways. We're going to be utilizing retaining walls to limit some grading limits on to private property, and then stormwater as well. There will be added stormwater along the corridor. We'll be using some low-impact stormwater management facilities for stormwater treatment. There will be quite a few easements on this project, mostly temporary easements to have a easier and a better transition between the new construction of the trail into private property. We're starting that process now. We've been identifying easement needs, and we'll be reaching out to community members in the upcoming months. The Hopkins Middle School West is interested in the project as well. There's a school crossing a Baker Road that they currently use, and the city is working with them to incorporate some improvements at the school and at the crossing. And then Lone Lake Park, the goal is to get the regional trail to meet all the requirements that we need. However, we want to minimize all the impacts to the park, tree removal, any impacts to natural resources, as well as there's a creek nearby. So it's working on being good stewards of existing natural resources out there while meeting all the requirements that we need to meet to get this trail constructed. So here are just kind of some existing and proposed sections. On the left is through Lone Lake Park. The existing trail is 8-foot wide aggregate trail, and we will be constructing a 10-foot wide asphalt trail through the park, basically following the same alignment. There's going to be some grading to minimize some of the steep slopes that are out there. On Roland Road, there's an existing trail 8-foot wide on the north side of the road for the majority of it, but there's also a grass area, probably from Baker going to the east. So there's some grass and some trail. What we will do is be moving the curb line in and narrowing up the travel lanes from 12 to 11 feet and narrowing up the shoulders as well. Constructing a 10-foot wide paved trail on the back of trail, so the paved surface will be 12 feet wide, 2-foot shoulder of a clear zone behind back of curb. Baker is going to be a trail with a 5-foot boulevard. These are the general new sections for it. Existing roadway has 12-foot lanes with 6-foot shoulders. We will be narrowing up the lanes so we can push the the curb line in. So if we go to the east side, on the bottom, under the existing, we'll have a 10-foot trail, 5-foot boulevard, and the drive lanes will go from 12 feet to 11 feet, and the shoulders will be reduced as well to either 3 or 4 feet wide. Same thing on the west side, with the trail on the west side, 10-foot trail, 5-foot boulevard. One thing to note, there are sections of Baker Road that do not have a curb, so if it's opposite of the trail and there's no curb, we may have to have a wider shoulder, probably 6 feet, because of the state aid requirements for the roadway. If you're familiar with the road, there's a lot of topography, grade changes along it, so there's some challenges, and one way to overcome some of these challenges are to put the trail on the back of curb. We'll still be reducing the travel lanes. Starting on the bottom is the east side shows a trail up against the back of curb, 10-foot paved trail with a 2-foot paved shoulder. And the same thing on the, I'm sorry, that was the upper right is the east side. The west is the, actually it's the same. Sorry, there's a trail on the west and east side.
Can we move the image, or minimize, move Rebecca's, the camera image so that people can see the
box, yeah.
there you go.
Perfect.
So our desire is to have a 10-foot trail with a 5-foot boulevard. There's some really steep driveways, mature trees, and just the road drops off in certain areas where to get the trail to fit, to get the driveways to match the existing grade, we will be up against the back of the curb. We will have a 10-foot wide corridor. Some areas we may look at going down to an 8-foot wide trail depending on what the needs are. Driveways are the biggest challenge right now. So moving on to, I think I lost control of this.
Here, I got you.
All right.
Okay.
There we go. So I just have some examples of what the trail will look like in certain situations. This is at the Excelsior Baker Road crossing. North is to the right. It's a very, very tight intersection. So going from the right side of the screen to the left, we're going to move the curb into the roadway a little bit more and reconstruct the island. That's in the magenta color. There's a large retaining wall on the west side. And then as we get south of Excelsior, towards the left of the screen, it's going to be moving that curb line in to the top of the screen and having a trail right on the back of curb. This part of the project will be paved with the trail part of the project. So the project's multi-year. It's going to be 2 years of paving of the trail, and then the county is coming in after us to redo the roadway. So this portion of the project will be done with the county roadway project. Just, it makes sense to minimize disruption at the intersection. The Trunk Highway 7 bridge. Currently, this is proposed conditions, but currently there's 1 northbound lane and 2 southbound lanes. North is to the right again. The trail's on the west side, so we will be constructing a 12-foot wide trail along the edge of the bridge, constructing a concrete barrier between the trail and the traffic, and reducing southbound from 2 to 1 lane. I touched on the middle school crossing. This is a schematic of what is desired at this location. So right now, the entrance to the school is the 3 lanes on the left side of the picture, and the crossing of Baker Road is on the south side of that entrance drive. The desired plan is to move the crossing to the north side to align with the roadway. And the school is planning some work to construct a new sidewalk on the north side of their entrance drive. This would also reduce the width of the lanes at the crossing to minimize vehicles trying to drive around on the shoulder while traffic stopped and kids are crossing. So it would be a good safety improvement. Overhead power. So on the left side of the screen, I have some yellow circles that show overhead power lines that run parallel with the roadway that is in conflict with the trail. So between Trunk Highway 7 and Excelsior, there's existing overhead power on the west side of the road. From Excelsior to Roland, there's overhead power on the east side of the road. Working with Excel, they would look at swapping the overhead power from the one side of the road to the other. And to do this, they would look at minimizing any tree removal, minimizing trimming, but also we have to avoid conflicts with the other utilities. So as they get into their design, it may stay on the same side, and we may look at having it behind the trail or in the grass boulevard, depending on other conflicts that might be out there with utilities. There's a small section on Roland Road 2 where there's overhead power on the north side, and with the trail expansion, it would move to the south side. The Park District, when we do these projects, we work with our city partners to have Excel relocate overhead power poles. And if there's a desire to bury, I know that would be a city led initiative with partnership with the Park District. This is just really typical trail construction progression. In the upper left is existing conditions. This was a trail that was recently completed. It was a lane drop, but it just kind of shows existing, and then we get our removals as we move from the top across the screen from left to right. Then we get new curb put in. Go to the bottom left, we get into grading, base course, and paving, topsoiling, and finally in the bottom right is completed trail with erosion control blanket and hydro seeding put in. So it just kind of gives you a feel for the disruption that you'll see out there. There might be less, might be more, depending on the existing grades of the right-of-way and property. So the Bryant Lake schedule, we started design in January 2025. We expect to have it completed January 27. We're working on the easement acquisition. We identified easements starting in September of last year, and throughout this year we'll be getting appraisals, working with the property owners to get the easements that we need for the project. As Danny said, Park District City will be working on agreements coming up through this year into summer. Bidding, we plan to get this out for bid early 2027, try to hit a good bidding window. Construction, 2 years, starting in May, going through November of 2028. That's for trail and roadway. And then after completion of the trail, we would look at having a ribbon cutting in celebration of completion of the project. I'll just turn it over to Blake.
Thank you, Josh. So I'm Blake Hansen, Project Manager at Three Rivers Park District. I'm managing the Eagle Lake Regional Trail Project. So this slide just talks about impacts similar to Josh's Bryant Lake project. We're really focusing on designing to minimize our impacts. We are narrowing the road in a few select locations and reducing lanes. And really that helps with our floodplain impacts and make sure that we're not flooding any homes or impacting the floodplain in any way or wetlands. And it also ultimately reduces the amount of stormwater we have to treat too, which is also a benefit. We're aiming to keep the regional trail complete in the right-of-way. As you can see below, we're not expecting to need any easements at this point in time, so hopefully we don't have to approach any property owners. And then we're also utilizing reduced clear zones with fence and retaining walls in some areas, particularly along South Frontage Road, just right by Ridgedale there, to minimize impacts and making sure we're not impacting the wetlands around Crane Lake. There will be some tree removals along the South Frontage Road just to allow for grading, and then as well along Hopkins Crossroad. So in the image there on the south end, you can't quite see it, it's right behind the box there, but there's a little green spot at the very end where the intersection of Minnetonka Boulevard and Plymouth Road are. We're doing some minor modifications there, and then as we move north, you can see along Plymouth Road between Halloway, did I have that right? Hilloway, yes. And Ridgedale Drive, we're doing some improvements there. And then along the South Frontage Road, pretty much the entire length, from Ridgedale to Hopkins Crossroad, and then along Hopkins Crossroad from Wayzata Boulevard, just north of 394, up to city limits. So on the south end, this is at the intersection of Minnetonka Boulevard and Plymouth Road. What we're trying to do here is, it sounds like there's been an issue with people hitting that bridge, the barricade there, the barrier. So in order to mitigate some of that, improve the safety for trail users and also vehicular traffic, we're going to extend that curb kind of tangential in a straight line south, so that hopefully we'll keep traffic on the road and away from the barrier.
Help if they weren't looking at their phones.
Yeah, I mean, yes, that might help too, but, so point being, we're trying to reduce the risk of bridge hits, improve safety for trail users. Sounds like it's happened a couple times, and we don't want someone behind there when it does happen, for sure. So here's some sections of the project. So this is the north section along Plymouth Road between Hillaway and the library driveway is kind of a weird cutoff here, but that's where we're going to for this one. So you can see we've got 3 northbound lanes, a left turn lane, a right turn lane, and a through lane. The proposed section will eliminate the right turn lane into the library parking ramp. We've done traffic analyses, and it doesn't appear to be warranted or used sufficiently to warrant it. It's an independent turn lane. So as you can see, right now there's about 2 foot of clear zone between the back of curb and the trail, and right now behind that trail there's utility poles and retaining walls and all sorts of other things. By dropping that lane, we'll be able to provide a healthy boulevard and minimize any impacts on the private property. So that's part of the way that we're able to get out of needing easements. In the next section, you can see that's the library driveway to Ridgedale. Basically there, we can't drop any lanes, so what we're proposing is to put the trail to back of curb on the bottom right there with that striped 2 foot clear zone. So it'll be 12 feet paved, 2 feet clear zone, and then 10 foot trail. Along South Frontage Road, we are making some modifications, or proposing some modifications. Currently, there are it's 2 lanes, 13 feet in each direction with 4 foot shoulders on either side. We're proposing to eliminate the shoulders entirely and have 2 13-foot lanes, grass boulevard, and a 10-foot trail, excuse me. Right now the trail's only about 7 feet there. It's very close to Crane Lake. It kind of just drops off right into the lake for the most part. So this will give us some extra wiggle room. My understanding is that the city's also coming back right shortly after us and has a planned mill and overlay project, so they can reestablish Crown and kind of clean up that road a little bit as well. So this is kind of primarily what you're going to see along South Frontage Road. These are some alternatives that we have here, essentially by the County Road 73 park and ride station and east of there. So you can see there's on the top left, there's what the existing condition is, 7-foot trail with a fence right behind it. The proposed condition is going to kind of keep similar constraints. It's going to narrow it up a little bit, and then we'll have a little bit of a boulevard, but you'll still see that fence there. On the bottom, you see we have, the median section, and then we are proposing to extend an existing retaining wall. There's actually a retaining wall out there already to prevent wetland impacts. We're proposing to lengthen it, and then we'll reinstall that fence on top of it. So these is kind of the conditions you'll see, and it's, these aren't super specific. You'll probably see a mix of both of these along that stretch.
Can I ask a question? So why, so there's an existing and a proposed with no median. Who would be proposing the median and why?
The median is actually there already, yep. And that,
so
I don't know if that's partially to do with the park and ride station. I assume that would be the case. So we're not going to mess with the median. We wouldn't be disturbing
So it's
that.
more likely that the bottom right is the proposed is what will.
Yeah, and that median doesn't extend all the way past the
Okay.
park and ride. So
Okay.
it's kind of, like I said, it's kind of a hodgepodge of the two. These are just kind of
Okay.
typical example sections, I'd call them. Overhead power, I'm kind of putting this in the middle of my sections here. So this is the section between Wayzata Boulevard and Fairfield. This section has some overhead power that's right behind the curb currently. We're exploring relocation options with Excel. We're proposing to drop a lane here, well, it's not a right turn lane, it's a through right, and basically widen out that boulevard to get some extra space. Currently, that existing trail you can see there in the lower right picture is actually partially on private property. It's within a drainage and utility easement. So we're trying to get that off of private property, get it back into the public right of way. Obviously, the utilities are in the way a little bit, so we'd propose relocating those. We've got to also make sure that we're avoiding, there's quite a few utilities in that section, so we're trying to avoid impacts to other utilities as well. So these are the typical sections. On the left side, you can kind of see the existing. It's pretty tight. On the right side, you see that there's only 2 southbound lanes. So we'd be dropping that right through lane. We are working through that with Hennepin County right now. They have some feedback, but we're working through. We're thinking we'll be able to get it, get it dropped. It's not necessary to have that additional southbound lane. And so that we would basically keep the utility poles in a similar location. They'd be behind the curb a few feet outside of the clear zone where it doesn't pose a safety risk, but it would just be basically 15 feet in closer, away from the right-of-way, edge of right-of-way. As we go north from Fairfield to the city limits, you can see that this is kind of the existing condition on the left. There's an existing trail for, I can't remember, there's a section we're missing a trail. I think most of it is in, I think most of the city of Minnetonka is paved all the way to city limits. On the right, you'll see the proposed section, no major modifications there. We are going to be proposing a small swale for a portion of this segment. It'll be between the curb and the trail, and that's to meet our stormwater management requirements, and get water quality and volume requirements. So similar to Josh's Bryant Lake project, design started in 2025. It'll continue into 2027. Agreements will be forthcoming this year. Bidding early 2027. Construction should be complete within 2027. Should be. Ribbon cutting will also be 2027 or spring of 2028.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much. Council, any questions? This is a big, exciting project, but also very nice that it's a Three Rivers project.
Yeah, I have some questions.
Paula, go ahead.
Thank you. So thanks, great presentation, really appreciated that. Can you just talk about the narrowing of roadways to minimize the encroachment in both projects? Like, what are we looking at in terms of narrowing lanes, and how is the, with the new overall width compared to the existing? Like, how much wider are we looking at for the entire roadway, including boulevards and trail?
Okay, so for Baker Road, the existing has 12-foot lanes with 6-foot shoulders.
Right.
The proposed will be 11-foot lanes with about 4 or 5 to 5-foot shoulders. So it'll be narrowed about, what was that, 4 feet?
But the overall, but since you're adding the trail.
Oh, you want that width
yeah,
too? Oh.
Yeah, how is the overall width like changing for the entire width print, I guess I would say.
Okay, so.
Of the segments.
Yeah, so if the trail is on the, let's say the trail's on the east side, the west side of the road will stay as is. That will not change, and everything will just kind of crunch in roadways, but then it'll extend out, probably another 6 or 7 feet. I'd have to take a look at exactly, but where the pavement is now, there'll be pavement farther away from the center line of the road.
So it's going into, basically property, and you said you're not gonna have to have easements or acquisition?
We anticipate maybe close to 80 temporary easements so the temporary easements are just for grading purposes, and the trail will be outside of that property. There could be maybe up to 15 permanent easements depending on retaining walls. So if the retaining wall, let's say, is in the right-of-way, but maybe within a foot or two and holding back material on private property, we would get a permanent easement, because if we ever need to be reconstructed and there's tiebacks for the retaining wall, so we would have to look at getting permanent easements for that. And there's maybe one property where the road isn't in the center of the right-of-way. It's really skewed off to one side, on the side we're putting the trail. So we might have to get some permanent easement, because a small portion of the trail would be on the private property. So that would be permanent.
Have you already started talking to, that'll be part of the design process as you go forward, you'll contact those properties?
Yes, all property owners have got an early notification letter saying we may or may not need an easement from you. So now we're at the point where we're able to start staking out in the field, here's the actual easement we need, get an appraisal and talk with each property owner individually for that.
But you said that's minimal in terms of not that many that you're gonna need for that probably.
The permanent?
Yeah, the
Correct, correct. We're trying to make that as minimal as possible.
And, so are most of it in both, and I assume is the same for, both projects, both the Bryant Lake and the Eagle Lake Trail, is there similar, you would say the similar for yours?
No, I'm not gonna have any easements.
And no easements, that's right, I saw that, but in
Hopefully.
terms of the lane narrowing,
Yeah, it's similar. On South Farnage Road, for example, there's 4-foot shoulders there that are really not functioning or not useful, I should say. So we're able to trim that up and then provide additional space for the trail. So the footprint there is probably increased by 3 feet or so.
by 3 feet, okay.
Yeah,
Thank
from
you,
back
that's
of curb on the
helpful.
north side to the back of trail. That's my
And on
guess.
both of those, thank you, that's really helpful. And then, for both of the projects, are there already, there's trails just on one side, correct, of the roadway? So that's the plan, there isn't trails being constructed on both sides of the roadway, or there isn't existing sidewalks or trails on the opposite side of what you're constructing, is that correct?
There are some segments along the Eagle Lake corridor that do have sidewalk on the other side, and there's an existing trail for most of it, but we are taking it over as part of our regional system.
Right.
So we're expanding where we are doing construction. We're doing 10 foot. I think everything existing is 7 or 8 feet, pretty
Right,
narrow.
but you're not necessarily doing it on both sides?
We're not doing anything redundant.
Okay. Or if there isn't a trail on either side, obviously you're only doing it on one side.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's the same with both projects.
Yep, thank you.
I have a couple of questions. So I went to the neighborhood meeting last week, and there was a lot of great information there. And along certain segments, certainly along Baker Road, as you get further south on Baker Road, there will be a lot of tree loss. So what is the tree replacement policy?
So we are working with city staff on defining that and the implementation of it. So still nothing specific yet.
Okay. Do we have any idea?
Yeah, Councilmember Calvert, Mayor, Council, I mean, we've talked about it, it's something we'll work with them on. Talked about using the tree sale potentially. I mean, if we were to come back and put trees back in the same place, you know, they run the risk later, but yeah.
I don't think we'll be able to put trees in the same
Yeah,
place, cause there's
correct.
gonna be infrastructure there, but I'm just talking, are we gonna try to do like one for every two, you know, because there's just, it is going to change the tree canopy, and we're adding infrastructure, which is going to, I mean, we're trying to, you know, reduce greenhouse gases, but we're gonna be adding to the urban heat island with paved trails and the wider footprint, and we'll be losing boulevard trees. So I was just wondering sort of
Sure.
if there's been any thought put into it.
Yeah, we haven't picked a number yet, but certainly open to feedback if you'd like to provide that feedback.
And then, and you know what my feedback will be. So, and then I was reading some of the materials, and in some places there was talk about native seeds instead of turf grass. And I was wondering, you know, I just for myself, because I live on the Baker Road, I'm just wondering, can people opt for native reseeding versus sod, or is it just gonna be a grass seed?
So right now the plan shows the native seed on some steeper slopes in Lone Lake Park, trying to minimize disruption and how much grading we need to do. So we'll have steeper slopes, and we would look at using native seed that doesn't have to be mowed or maintained. We haven't had a discussion about having it in the boulevard along the roadway. I don't know how well that would hold up with the salt and everything. So we do use a salt-resistant seed is what we would be planning to use there. It could be an option, but it could be hard to go individual properties because of, well, I wanted turf and now I have all this wildflower seed coming in and vice versa, or the turf could take over in the future, long term. It could be hard to do that. But that's our plan now. We could be open to it. Again, with sometimes the city or county may have a standard that we would follow too.
Yeah, and it's something there's stormwater areas. I mean, it's certainly something we could look at.
I'd be interested, and my only other question is, I know it's gonna come up because it looks like the Baker Road Trail is gonna take a little bit longer than the Eagle Lake. So we're looking at, you know, a few years of disruption, and so I wanted to know a little bit about, you know, communicating with the residents. Is there an end? You know, are we starting on the north and working south? Sort of how is it gonna work for people to get in and out of their driveways, just because I know those questions are gonna come up.
Yeah, so generally we would plan to start on the north side at Minnetonka Boulevard and work south. Ideally, we would get through, it would be great to get all the way down to Roland in the first year with the trail and then follow up year 2 with the roadway. We might only get to Excelsior, for example. It all depends on the contractor, weather. And then year 2 for the trail, Roland into Lone Lake Park. And hopefully by that point, if we do have year 2 work on Baker, that gets finished up right away and the county does the roadway work in 1 year. Yeah, there will be, we were planning for 2 lanes of traffic throughout construction. It'll be narrower lanes. There'll be the traffic control cones, so they'll be very visible. There will be times when they're working in front of a house that you can't get in and out of the driveway, but the goal would be for each night and morning you are able to get in and out, that there won't be open trenches. But during active construction, in front of a house, it'd be hard to get into the driveway. They'd keep it gravel, keep it accessible, but there will be some times when you can't. During the construction grading, once we start getting into curb and gutter, there will be some maybe a day or 2 where you can't, or we'll have to look at how to get vehicles over curb and gutter that's not going to destroy it. So there's going to be some working with the contractor on that to keep it accessible for all the residents.
And just this last question, with the immigration enforcement and the impacts to certain industries, are we anticipating any delay just because the makeup of the crews might be a little bit different or difficult to, you know, the workforce will have impacts?
At this time, we don't know.
Okay.
Projects last year and that we have out for bid are starting this year. We haven't experienced any delays yet.
Okay, council, any more questions?
I got a quick question. What's
Okay, could you go?
what's the typical hours of operation for construction?
Oh, good question.
Usually it's about like 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. or whatever. I don't know if you guys, I'm not familiar with your specific city ordinance, but.
Yeah, I mean, so our ordinance says 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. During the week, we never work that late generally. That's in rare circumstances. Usually we see crews shut down around 5. I mean, it's certainly something we could control too if needed.
Okay.
But, you know, generally crews want to get home at a certain point as well. So, you know, we don't see it much past 5.
Okay.
Anybody else? Patsy, you see anybody else?
Nope.
Okay, all right,
Could
well,
I-
thank you so, oh, go ahead, Will.
Sorry. Yeah, just to jump, we had 2 questions. I think we've got feedback on the first one. We did have a second one in there. You know, Three Rivers mentioned the overhead burial. That's not included in their project. Certainly something staff has looked at with them. Something we could work on in the upcoming CIP. We just wanted to see if you had any feedback. We'd be open to looking at some burial.
Overhead burial line burial.
1000%. It just, I mean, one of the most disappointing aspects of this I mean, I'm willing to take the hit and have the path on my side of the road, but the utilities are on the other side of the road, and so we were missing that piece of it. And it just seems like such a lost opportunity if we're doing that much work anyway, and I know that they're laying, you know, storm sewer, I mean, there's gonna be a lot of digging, so why not?
Okay, anybody else have input on that?
When possible.
Yeah, if it's possible to do it, I think now's the time to do it, so yeah.
All right. I think you got your answer. All right, anything else, Will or Mike?
Will's got another one.
Not from our end. Thank you. Appreciate the feedback. Thanks to Three Rivers.
Yep, same, Rebecca.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much for coming, appreciate it, and again, this has been a long time coming, so looking forward to it, and I know most residents are as well, so thank you very much. All right, moving on, I don't know, let's see, we probably need a break, huh?
Sure.
Yeah.
Let's take a 5-minute break, get readjusted, and then we'll be back for the next item.
We're ready.
Yes, she said yes.
Yes.
Okay, excellent, all right, just quickly, if you all please, as we continue on to this next agenda item, make sure to just, defer to Patsy with your questions, and she'll make sure to keep orderly,
Sorry, Patsy.
control of- I just can't see it the whole thing, so, all right, moving on, I appreciate that. Moving along, so we're on item 3C, which is the 2026-2027 Trail Street Major Capital Improvement Project Review. I think Phil and Will have that, unless, Mike, you have something to start with.
No, thank you, Mayor. I do not. Let's just, for the sake of time, we'll just jump right into it and have, I think Phil started off, and then Will also add.
Excellent. Phil, floor is yours.
Thanks, Mayor Council. We have lots of projects here to run through, so appreciate that. I want to mention that Chris Long and Mitch Hatch are here. They're the ones that do most of the work from a coordination standpoint on these projects, so wanted to mention that. And my clicker might need adjusting. All right. So, yeah, as I said, quite a few projects to run through. I'm going to do it in 2 sections. The first one, just general overview of the projects that we have in town, and then doing that pretty quickly, saving time for questions if there are any, and then spending a little more time on Excelsior Boulevard, you know, and with 2 questions there of, is there support for trail on both sides? If not, if just one, we're going to run through a communication plan and a schedule revision. So from that standpoint, there is lots going on in town. So these projects are things that are going to occur in 2026, not necessarily construction, but from a communication standpoint, we might be in design and going through public engagement and bringing items to City Council to review. Lots of different agencies running these projects. The 2 regional trails are included on this map. 2 things to note is that the 394 corridor is going to be very busy with projects from a number of different jurisdictions. So those projects are all independent. They're all happening relatively on the same schedule, and you'll probably see signage in that area for most of 26 and 27. The other area would be Excelsior Boulevard. There's just a lot of projects in that area, and as we just talked about, the regional trails are in the same corridor. Moving into projects, 394, this project is set to start in April. Most of the work is around Excelsior, but pavement rehab and replacement will be going on up to 494, including the ramps. So MnDOT is handling this project, communication through MnDOT. We have it linked on Minnetonka Matters from a coordination standpoint, but it will be most of the summer. Adjacent to that project is Gleason Lake Road. Hennepin County is handling this project. It's a full reconstruction of the roadway, replacement of the trail on the north side, potentially a trail on the south side. They've gone out for public engagement this last fall, in November. So currently they're working on a concept that would come to City Council in the future, design in 26, 27, and actually construction in 28. So it's a little further out, but directly adjacent. Whitegate Lift Station, force main rehabilitation. This project, we're planning on construction this year, design and construction this year. It just needs to occur before the reconstruction of Gleason Lake Road. Hennepin County is overlaying Plymouth Road from 394 north through Plymouth. So this summer, they're going to be replacing ped ramps, doing ADA upgrades, and then in 2027, they'll be overlaying the road. A couple things to note here is they're looking at potentially making some lane shifts, and they would work through an engagement plan to do that, switching to a 3-lane roadway. And then Arthur Street has been a topic of the crosswalk there, so potentially some upgraded crosswalk in that location. Signals, MnDOT's replacing the signal on Plymouth Road. At the ramps, they're closing the bus lane access, parking lot access, removal of the bus lane. And so this project will be in coordination with the county project and the overlay that is happening by the county. So this is 2026 construction, same time as the county's project, and the paving will occur by the county the following year. Wayzata Boulevard guardrail replacement. Replacing the guardrail there in front of Maurice Ford. This is looking similar as the project in the lower right. New guardrail, steel, so happening at some point this summer. Marion Lane lighting. This is older lighting in the lower right-hand corner. 9 lights be replaced. Excel is doing that work, and it'll be look like the picture in the middle. So we'll do a little bit of engagement and let folks know that that's happening, and construction is planned for later in 2026. MnDOT's also replacing the signals at 394 Ridgedale Drive, both north and south of 394. Similar to the other project, they're replacing the signals. They're adding a sidewalk, or widening a sidewalk, shown there in green, and enhancing some crosswalks. And then after that work is done, we're working on the city end to do a couple quote projects to change some lighting and seat walls to be match the Ridgedale placemaking work that happened around the mall, so it would all blend together. Three Rivers Park, we just talked about this one last. Sherwood Lift Station force main rehabilitation. This is lining an existing force main adjacent to Hopkins Crossroad. Be involvement with the neighborhood there. This is all underground work, and there will be some holes where the liner happens, but for the most part, mostly underground work. Belmont Storm Sewer. This is some failing storm sewer in the neighborhood. We are working both with Public Works crews and probably contractors to replace some of this storm sewer. It's in pretty tough shape, so we've worked through preliminary design in 25, and we'll design and construction is planned for later in the year. Cedar Lake Road, Ridgedale Drive. These are overlay projects that we had brought to City Council recently. Replacement of 4 signals, ADA improvements. Construction is planned for 2026, and I think it's about 1.2 miles of repaving. MnDOT is also replacing the signal at 169 and Cedar Lake Road, both sides, one in St. Louis Park, one in Minnetonka Boulevard, or one in Minnetonka, and then paving at the same time, as it's highlighted there. So coordinating this project with the city's project from a paving standpoint, an access standpoint, and a neighborhood meeting was just held just a couple weeks ago in January here, and then agreement was reviewed by council. Pond dredging, next to Cedar Bend, tiny little pond. This is going to just be a quote project. Planning for that construction in March or maybe a little bit after. Timing is not quite as important as other previous dredging projects, given the water levels there. We do have a noise wall coming in 2027, so this summer we're going to start engagement, planning for some branding in the middle of the wall. MnDOT's currently putting together some renderings to take a look at. It will not be blue, it'll be a different color, but that's the option we had right now. So coming soon, but there will be an agreement that council will see probably towards the end of the year on that as well. Libs Lake Bridge. This bridge is reduced load rating this last fall and is in definite need of repair. So we're starting design and coordination and engagement on this bridge. The goal is to have design complete by the end of the year so we can go out for some state funding. We need to be on the list with a completed, fully designed project in order to apply for that funding. So construction is planned for 2029. It might take us a couple cycles to get through to get funding, but this will set us up to be able to apply for that. Minnetonka Boulevard Trail, new trail on the north side of Minnetonka Boulevard, planned for construction soon. I believe coming back to council March 23rd with bids. Minnetonka Boulevard Lift Station, this is towards Applewood Point, electrical and mechanical upgrades associated with the lift station for construction this year. Sanitary sewer lining, it's cleaning and lining clay pipe in the area. We don't have those locations exactly figured out yet, but it'll be in the red circle there. Windridge Lift Station rehab, same thing, mechanical, electrical upgrades. Construction plan for 27 in this one, but design engagement is this year. Hopkins Crossroad Trail, this is the next major north-south trail. This is Minnetonka Boulevard down towards Highway 7. There will need to be overhead burial with that project. It's a fairly, similar to the northern segments, fairly involved. We did receive some money from Hennepin County, $500,000 to start project development and design. So we'll start that in 26, and then ultimately 29 is when construction is planned. This is a Bryant Lake Regional Trail we talked about before. Kinsel Neighborhood Reconstruction Project, we're heavy in preliminary design right now, planning for a neighborhood meeting in April or May. That's a full reconstruction of the neighborhood. There'll be park improvements, and the trail plan does show a trail through that neighborhood as well. So as part of the engagement, we'll ask the neighborhood what they want that to look like. Planned for 2027 construction. Hennepin County is going to be overlaying Excelsior Boulevard from Glen Lake to Shady Oak Road in 27, doing ped ramp work, ADA work in 2026. So fairly involved project there in coordination with the other work in the area. We do need to replace a water main crossing across the road. Probably do that this summer. It needs to be in advance of Hennepin County's work. Hennepin County is going to be overlaying and doing ped ramp work on Eden Prairie Road this year, in south of Excelsior Boulevard down to Highway 62. Red Circle sidewalks. We're working on sidewalks along Red Circle Drive and along Shady Oak Drive, and improving a crosswalk across Red Circle in that location. Should be widening along Shady Oak and a new sidewalk on Red Circle. Green Oak Reversal. This is a project that was developed way back in 2013. It's reversing the flow of traffic and creating this central corridor around the new park area and the station area. So it will also remove an existing signal. So our infrastructure gets a little bit less and creates a little bit more flow around that central corridor area. We're currently in design. We'll go out in probably later 2026 with some engagement, planning for construction in 2027. Opus Lighting, this is lighting replacement of all the trail lighting, primarily trail lighting throughout Opus. Design engagement is this year. We're planning for construction to start later this year too, would extend through most of 2027 as well. Holiday Wing Rose drainage study. We did this drainage study in collaboration with 9 Mile Creek and Eden Prairie. And what this did is allow us to coordinate all the drainage from the area shown there down into Birch Island Lake, which is in Eden Prairie. We did that to set ourselves up for lift station repair and replacement at Woodgate Pond, Lake Holiday, and Kramer Pond. And so planning for Woodgate and lift station replacement in 26, probably into 27 as well. Kramer lift station replacement is part of the Excelsior Boulevard project. And then we identified some storm sewer that needs to be upsized on Whited Avenue tentatively earmarking that for 2028. Ultimately, that would remove about 25 houses out of the floodplain. So a pretty big change there in the positive once this work is all completed. We did have an open house in August to take feedback too from basically all the area shown there. Scenic Lane storm sewer, just adding some storm sewer before the city's mill and overlay project this summer. Some failed storm sewer we'll be working on this summer. This will be a contractor project. It's pretty tight between the houses, so there will be some design work that needs to be done and a contractor to do that work. Similar on Kingswood Terrace, same type of thing, just replace some failed storm sewer. Mill and overlay work, this is what our city crews will do for from a milling and overlaying standpoint. I think it's about 10.3 miles, so they'll get that done this summer. And similarly, from an engineering standpoint, we put together these plans in-house. It's another couple miles of paving that we'll go out and get a contractor for, and then you'll see that contract, I believe, March 23rd as well, bids from that. And then water meter replacement, ongoing, planning for about 9,000 water meters in 2026, primarily in the south half of the city. So with that, are there any questions? Does anyone want more detail on any of those projects?
That's a lot. Anybody, any questions?
Looks like Deb has one.
I have one quick one, and that it sounds like a big, it's a big deal with the lift gate. We're talking about the Whitehead down. What's involved in lift gate installation? So that sounds like the storm sewer is a big one. What's involved in?
So those are lift station replacements on those are existing lift stations that we have at those areas. And so really what we're doing is we've taken a look at now with new rainfall data, are those the right size? This is at least a 30-year design, so we want to make sure that we're able to move as much water as possible. And so what's interesting about this sub-watershed is that all the water goes to Birch Island Lake. It's just really about how fast it gets there. So they actually need water faster. So this is a very rare situation where we can increase the pump size. We can increase the mechanicals and the electrical to push more water through. We just have to get it there, and then it has a place at Birch Island Lake to get. So it's upsizing those lift stations, replacing the pumps, the electrical, the mechanical, and then some pipes in the process.
I have a couple questions. So I see in the packet we have that alternative trail improvement over at the Havenwood and 101.
Yes.
Will that happen, or is that a recommendation?
I have that in part of the next piece with Excelsior Boulevard, so we can talk about it.
Okay, and then I have one more question, and this is about the roundabout that was suggested for Woodland and Excelsior. Where's that at?
I have that in Excelsior discussion
Okay,
as well.
I'm thinking about things that I'm like, yeah, because no, those two things is on my mind. So pretty much it. Okay. All right.
Just a quick comment. Thank you for being so kind of opportunistic and building on some of these things. I think that shows that you guys are really kind of thinking and trying to coordinate with some of the other agencies that are doing work. So much appreciated.
That's a lot and it's scary.
Anyone else? No.
Okay, great. All right, thanks, Phil. I like this little 15-minute segment. Gives us good context on what we're gonna see, so write that down, keep it. All right, so moving on, then we're gonna talk about your second part of your presentation, Excelsior Boulevard.
Yeah, thank you. So the last time we talked about Excelsior Boulevard was December 8th, and as part of that that process, we've been tracking this project for about 3 years, been in design and coordination with Hennepin County for about a year and a half. So I'm just going to talk through first what is proposed with the project, then go through some of the engagement, and then some alternatives there from a trail standpoint. So the project includes full reconstruction of Excelsior Boulevard from 101 to Williston. meeting those county standards. Trails are proposed on both sides to improve safety, traffic calming, et cetera. We also have water main replacement, some isolated sanitary sewer replacement, overhead burial, intersection improvements, and drainage improvements. So from a roadway standpoint, I'm talking about full roadway replacement, including concrete and curb and gutter. You can see the typical section on the side. 6-foot shoulders, on-road bike lanes.
Shoot, I'm so sorry.
And 11-foot drive lanes, safety improvements, traffic calming. What I would say is these are general typical sections, but as we work through the design, later in the slideshow, I'll show you how we take a look at individual situations. In general, 8-foot paved trail on both the north and south side of Excelsior. We did look at 5 or 6-foot sidewalk, but it was not chosen just given the limited uses. As a standard 6-foot boulevard, we did look at 2 and 4 foot, and you'll see those examples where we do need to tighten up to reduce impacts. Retaining walls are also used. And then the extension of trail on the south side by Williston, between Williston and Eden Prairie Road. So there is an existing sidewalk on the north side in this location. However, it's been one of those areas that's been requested quite heavily by people. So it's near the strip mall there, and the brewery is being added into the project, and then a little overlook near Wing Lake. That said, from a standard standpoint, we're not proposing trail between Spring Lane and Clear Spring Road on the south side. That's just to acknowledge that the natural resources are there and that there is access using the tunnel and connection by the library to 101. There aren't any driveways there or new users, so able to remove the trail in that location. From a crosswalk standpoint, there's 8 locations throughout the project where there's enhanced crosswalk, which means a concrete median where people can have a refuge, look out for the traffic in one direction, not have to worry about both directions when they're crossing. Overhead power burial along the length of the project. This really needs to occur, at least begin prior to construction, but would last into construction as well. So planning for 2026, 2027 for burial. From an easement impact standpoint, temporary and permanent easements are needed for most properties along the corridor. I would say this is really standard for any of the trails that we've completed, listing some of those out: Plymouth Road, Excelsior, Minnetonka Boulevard, Hopkins Cross Road. This project is about the same impact as some of those other projects. It's just more because it's longer. It's 2 miles compared to some of the other ones that are a little bit smaller. So just given the road width and the history of it, that easements are needed from most properties. And the areas where there are significant impacts and natural resources, limiting those, and I'll run through some examples here. From older projects, Plymouth Road, this is 2019. The picture on the left is existing conditions, and you can see that through design, narrowing that the shoulder, and then narrowing the boulevard a little bit. You can see there's a little pedestal on the left-hand side, so you can see how it fits in there in both scenarios. So even though it doesn't look like it's going to, there's really limited impacts there by adjusting the boulevard. Same thing with this project, project on Excelsior Boulevard in 2020. Little retaining wall was used, and narrowing that shoulder reduced impacts quite a bit. Excelsior Boulevard 2021 project. You can see the trees on the left side. There was some tree removal in this location, but through the use of a wall, through the use of narrowing that boulevard, that's a 2-foot boulevard, concrete boulevard, instead of something wider. Not that there wasn't tree removal, but it was definitely limited. You can see the tree by the mailboxes is in both locations, or in both pictures. From this picture, again, some tree removal, but able to save some trees. That 2-foot concrete boulevard is shown. We're able to steal some of the roadway narrowing some of the lanes, again, to limit impacts as much as possible. This is Minnetonka Boulevard 2023 trail construction. You can see the shoulder narrows. The concrete curb is added. Again, that 2-foot boulevard, concrete boulevard, and actually able to save those bushes and fit everything in that area. Last one here, Hopkins Cross Road 2024. This house is pretty close to the road. Looks like the impacts are going to be pretty significant. We were able to really save most of it by adding a wall, keeping that 2-foot boulevard, the concrete, keeping the trail tight against the roadway. All these required easements, and I'd say this is a good example of being able to grade back into the yard actually allows you to help fit the trail in and make it look natural compared to keeping it tighter. So, examples from Excelsior Boulevard of how this would work is the top picture. Don't know if I can use a pointer here. No, I can't. There's a Grass Boulevard on the north on the top, and as we get around the curve there by the arrow, the boulevard drops, and it will move to a concrete boulevard. So, although we talked about the typical section of being a wider grass boulevard, 6 feet, we actually are trying to limit those impacts as much as possible. Similarly, on the south side, the trail's up against the road, and as you head to the west, widening it out to create a grass boulevard where possible. Similarly, through the process of design, the concept on the upper left was what we had brought forward in August of 25, and it shows a grass boulevard through that whole section, working through design and hearing resident feedback, limiting, pushing the trail right up against the back of the curb. That's a revised concept we brought in December. So acknowledging that some of these impacts, trying to reduce them as much as possible. And the picture below is kind of what it looks like there. So I would say that some of the areas about replanting trees and natural grasses, we do have several ponds that look like the one in the picture there. That would be a great place where we can plant as many trees as it makes sense, use grasses and natural flowers in those locations. Now backing up maybe to how we got here, from a public engagement standpoint, we initially reached out to over 2,100 properties, which is 5,000 plus residents back in September of 24. We, at that point, had told them we're going to start a project. We need survey. So we went through survey and gathered some data. And in November, December of 2024, we opened up an online portal for receiving feedback on the existing conditions and asked people what they would like in a project if they had options. And so we got 183 comments from 48 people, a couple emailed comments as well. What we heard high level is there's support for trails. People would like, traffic calming, things like that. So the highlighted 3 are they support the reconstruction of Excelsior Boulevard, addition of a trail, strong desire for walking and biking, and then traffic near scenic height causes backups. So trying to take those themes into our design, and so we did that. We put together a concept that we felt reflected what we heard from the neighbors and the residents. We held a neighborhood meeting in August of 2025, about 90 people attended. Also held about 10 individual one-on-one meetings with people at their homes. Took feedback there, ultimately opened up that online portal again to take feedback, and received 115 comments from 18 residents, and then 37 comments and comment cards through that process. So at first, the comments received were more general, of aspirational, and these are more targeted responses of I like this or I don't like this. And so specifically about where those are located along the corridor, more targeted. And then, there's support for roundabouts at the intersections, support for sight lines, support for preserving trees, pedestrian refuges, desire to maintain lighting, but also minimize light pollution, mixed opinions on the proposed trail on the north side, and then native plantings, support for those. So we took the engagement from both the existing conditions and the proposed layout. Those are shown here. And keep in mind the numbers of people that we reached out to, 2,100 households, 5,000 people. On the proposed layout, we have 37 people or 37 comments related to trails. And I would say the top one, we have 5 comments for opposition to trails. In the middle, support for trail on both sides of the road, we have 9. And support for one trail only on one side, we have 8. So I think, yes, there's support for trail. There's obviously some folks that oppose trail. I also think we're hearing from a very small group of people. Usually, my experience is when you go out to ask public comments and someone sees something on the exhibit, if they support it, they usually don't comment. So we did get some people supporting. I'll say all the bottom items are support for trail in one form or the other. So generally taking that feedback. For next steps, for options to not have trail, if trail is recommended only on one side of the road, what does that look like? So we would, we'd want to hear feedback about that, and I'll kind of talk through a plan of what that looks like from a schedule standpoint. From a communication standpoint, keeping our project team updated with Hennepin County. Hennepin County Active Transportation Committee is interested in where this goes, and they're asking us to come back and report late February, March on the discussion. We did check in with the Trails team since December 8th, confirmed support for trail on both sides of the roadway with the Trails team. And since that December 8th too, we've quantified those impacts, evaluated costs, and came up with that secondary schedule. So if trail is desired only on one side, staff would recommend that it would be the south side. This would provide a 7-mile continuous trail from Excelsior Boulevard from 101 to Blake Road and Hopkins. And it's really about the destinations for that south side. A figure here shows a little bit more where those destinations are. The red circles are schools. Blue circles are the village centers. There's a couple churches in there, and then parks as well. So splitting that between north and south side, again, the 2,100 properties are highlighted there in the 2 colors. It represents about 5,000 residents. This is the main east-west corridor in this area, and it's the only connection, east-west connection south of Highway 7 other than 62. So we expect it to be used quite a bit. And then those residents that are, if it's only located on the south side, those residents on the north side would need to find a safe way to cross. So there's approximately 8,000 cars a day on Excelsior Boulevard, and those residents would need to cross the road. Traffic volumes are highest in the morning and evening, which is what we would expect when pedestrians would want to be crossing. That's accessing the schools. If they're trying to walk to school, how do they get across? If they're trying to get to, walking the dog in the morning, that type of thing. So showing this picture on the right to show, residents that are on the north side would need to either cross at a non-crosswalk location or walk down to one of the dedicated crosswalks. So it's not only people that live directly on Excelsior, it's also those that live up some of those roads north-south. And then crosswalk medians will not necessarily be located at each intersection. So from a vehicle standpoint, 8,000 cars a day, it would be similar to the Minnetonka Mills area too. from a traffic standpoint. Also Plymouth Road, south of the mall area is pretty similar to, and those are somewhere in there. And then Baker Road is about 4,300 cars a day, so it's significantly more than Baker Road. So talking about whether there's gaps there to safely cross, it seems like it's a busy enough road to handle this type, to handle sidewalk on both sides. But at certain times of the day there would be gaps. The middle of the day there would be gaps. I'm not sure that the gaps are the same way in the morning and the evening though. Property impacts. On the north side, if the trail was reduced, the impacts would be reduced, but they would not be eliminated because it's not the only piece of the project that has impacts. Easements will be reduced. 39 permanent easements would not be needed. Those would mainly be trail easements. And then 17 temporary easements would not be needed. That doesn't necessarily mean we don't need easements from those properties, though. We just wouldn't need the same types of easements. So there would be less, but we're probably still talking to most of the property owners along the corridor with an easement need of some type for the project. And then adding in less infrastructure, there would be less walls needed. Yes, less impacts to natural resources and long-range plowing and maintenance. From a schedule standpoint, making that change from a communication standpoint, we would need to go back out and let the residents know that there's a change in scope. And so we would need to update a concept and then go back out to a neighborhood meeting, get feedback on that layout, and then work through those questions and ultimately come back to City Council in June or July. Discussions with Hennepin County, they would want to have a pretty involved engagement process to understand if there's support. Just knowing how some of these go, I would expect that we would just get different feedback. I don't think we would necessarily, we'd hear from a different group of people on their level of support for the project. Similarly, as I said before, I think there's a lot of folks that just generally aren't commenting if they support the proposal that's in front of them. From an engagement plan overall, this would impact when we're bidding. We're probably not able to bid until spring, summer of 27 instead of that window of 26 into 27. Construction would then be delayed. We're not exactly sure what we can get done in 2027. We'll probably start, but we don't want to open up a bunch of work that we can't get done in that time frame too. So it would for sure extend construction into most of 2029. From a cost standpoint, both trails about 15 million, split not quite evenly for a lot of different reasons. Trail on the south side only, it's about 5 million in savings overall for the project, 2.5 million for the Trail Improvement Fund. As a standalone project, that project probably costs about $10 million to add trail along the north side. So if it's reviewed later and someone comes back in and wants it, it's probably about $10 million. The other piece that's not on here is that by delaying the project with those schedule impacts, we're probably adding about $1 million to the project cost with inflation by missing that bidding window. It wouldn't necessarily be attributed to the Trail Improvement Fund, but it would be split among the other funds that are remaining. Doesn't necessarily fit on the slide, but I added on that on December 19th, the city was notified that we were successful with a grant for $1 million to bury overhead power. So that adds on to the county contribution of 24 million now and 25 million. So the Havenwood sidewalk, add in the on since it came up on that meeting on December 8th. Sidewalk was requested several times over the years from Havenwood restaurants or residents to connect to 101. We took this to the trails team and ranked that little segment against the other trails just to see where it would fall in comparison, and it ranked 23 of the 72 segments. Easements and utility relocation are needed. You can see it in the picture in the lower right-hand corner. There's a little bit of a berm there. There's some trees there. That whole area is full of private utilities. needing to redo that little retaining wall and make some signal adjustments. So that's all of that could be added for $50,000 to $75,000. We could wrap it into the project if council would like to direct that or not. And so with that, back to the questions of, does council support trail on both sides of Excelsior Boulevard? And if not, support the communication plan presented and revised schedule.
Excellent, thanks, Phil. Very good summary of what happened here. All right, council, let's first, anybody have any questions? And let's try to be as efficient as possible on this one.
Are you, this is specifically for the Excelsior Boulevard questions, right, Mayor?
Correct, right. Anything regarding what Phil just went over on that project.
Okay. I have some questions, but.
Go for it.
So,
Nancy's picking up.
so it would cost $1 million, you generally, to delay this, which means, okay, so if we don't do the north side of a trail, then we save $5 million, but we have to push it out, right? So that would cost $1 million. Is that, I mean, with all of that,
Yeah,
right?
we're estimating.
Save 2.5.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, the city portion would be $2.5 million, and we think that there would be, with inflationary pressures, there's a lot of unknowns too with all the tariffs, but just in general, pushing a project would probably cost the city about $1 million.
And then, well, mostly I was going to ask about how the county, so it feels like we have a good relationship with Hennepin County, and my question is, my concern is, sort of, I don't want to make the county mad, and so that they leave Minnetonka, and because it feels like we have a lot of projects that we partner with Hennepin County, and like, are we going to make them mad?
Yeah, they definitely support trail on both sides of the road. I think they understand there's, this is our community, and they would like to listen to city council, but they definitely support trail on both sides of the road for all the reasons talked about from a connectivity standpoint. I think that's why the Active Transportation Group is interested in the conversation, because they would support it, but they're not considering the same things that you may.
And we just don't know. We don't know if they'll decide, forget it, Minnetonka. Right? We just don't know.
I think they will, if we get to that point, I think they would understand where we're at. But
you're using political capital to get there.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't know. I mean, we don't think so, but yeah, this is certainly something that, maybe it'll be fine. Maybe they'll be concerned on the next project. I mean, but like Phil said, they definitely support both sides for the reasons he went through.
We haven't been a problem child before this, so.
Okay, any other question?
I have one, if you don't mind passing
go
in
ahead.
there. Just thinking either way about the timing, whether we just, approve both sides, or, so just thinking about the timing of Excelsior Boulevard and also the Baker Road Trail, that seems simultaneous, and like, how are we gonna help people get around on that end of town? Because that's gonna be a lot of disruption all at the same time.
It will be a lot of disruption. It really depends on how we phase those projects. They're such long projects that by phasing the work on the east end of one and the north end of the other, and so they don't exactly overlap, will drastically help. It doesn't mean that there won't be impacts and they won't overlap, but we can phase the work by working with our other partners to limit those impacts as much as we can.
The other question I had is if the council wanted to, if we had to go back to the public for engagement because we were contemplating just one side, would there be a danger of losing the $1 million for utility burial because is there like limit for that?
I
Grant?
don't know if there's a time limit. I think those are two independent things. I think they would be able to work through that.
I just wouldn't want to put it in jeopardy because it's valuable.
One thing I didn't mention though is that one of the things we hear about when we do trail projects, typically we go out to the public and we ask, what side of the road do you want to go on? Do we want to go on the east side or the west side, north, south, whatever? And so we get all that feedback and then we pick a side of the road because these are, standalone trail projects just to connect a corridor. And so this is a little bit different opportunity with the reconstruction project. Typically we hear back, just after the Hopkins Crossroad Trail got put together, heard from folks, okay, great, now when's the other side going to be done? Well, that might be a while, right? Like we have a lot of other areas that don't have any connections in town. So in the Hopkins situation, that was maybe a little more directed towards changes in busing, kids trying to get to school, but still trying to cross that road is a difficult thing. So,
And I have a
All right,
question.
any other questions?
And that standalone project, if we decided to add it, it would be $10 million.
yeah, as of today. And at that point, right now we have, with the cost sharing with Hennepin County, it's a 50-50 split for the trail and the easements and that type of thing. That probably would not be available if we came back a handful of years from now and said, gosh, we'd really like to put that in on the north side.
And then I think Mayor Kimberly, or Kizzy
And Paul.
had a question.
Yeah.
But she had one like way longer.
Yep, I know.
Yeah, I just
Just get in line.
Yeah, I just had a question. I know you talked about the Havenwood, but you didn't mention the turnabout.
Oh, the roundabouts?
Yeah, you didn't.
Yep.
I know, and then you talked about the different crosswalks that's needed, but you didn't really mention. So I would just want to hear more
Yeah,
about that. Where are we at with that?
From what we're recommending in the scope of the project, it would be to add a roundabout at Scenic Heights, at Woodland, and at Williston. And so Woodland and Williston currently have signals at those two intersections. Through the traffic analysis, we determined those were not warranted signals. So from a support standpoint, it's kind of the option of would we want stop signs or a different category would be roundabouts. I feel like roundabouts do a really good job of traffic calming. They're good for pedestrian crossings in a lot of situations, this being one of them, and would help a lot with that Scenic Heights. So I would say that from a feedback standpoint, from a resident standpoint, we generally had support for roundabouts. I think there were a couple of comments here and there of not supporting, but in general, I'd say they were supported. Is there something specific?
Yeah, for me, I talked to a couple residents, so I don't think they really, for me and the ones I talked to, they didn't really care whether it was a light or a flashing light. I think the recommendation was the turnaround or turnabout, but I don't think it really made a difference between the residents which one it was. It was just more so we want something there. And so I know that the city is thinking about more so if we did the light, then the city would need to pay for it. I think that might kind of explain something similar to that to me a while back. It's a cost analysis that we're looking at. The county would help pay for it.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't pay for the lights or something like that.
I'm not sure that the county would even support them even going in, even if we did pay for them because they're unwarranted. Again, we could have that conversation with Hennepin County and talk through that. I think what the roundabouts do though is they do provide a lot of traffic calming that the lights don't today. If you're driving linearly down the road, it is a physical barrier that you do have to slow down for compared to if you have a green light. So from that standpoint, I think it makes a lot of sense to include them. But I don't know if Hennepin County would support them going back or not. We haven't had that conversation.
One more question. My question would be, if you see that there's like congestion at Scenic Heights, Woodland, and another road, why wouldn't it be congestion? Because to me, the congestion really starts by the high school. So there was not a mention of a turnabout in that area. So why is it farther down Excelsior versus over by the high school?
Yeah, we started this project right at 101, and the congestion that was mentioned in the early initial conditions was about scenic heights in the elementary school. Just changes in how people operate from dropping their kids off and picking them up early is that people stack up and down scenic heights and actually block the intersection and cause a lot of delay in that area. So in coordination, we're working with the school to modify their parking lot. I didn't necessarily add that in here, but I think that's a crucial part to making sure that roundabout actually operates the way it should. If the school does not move forward with that, I think we need to be cautious about how we move forward. But at the same time, having one officer be able to handle how to manage the roundabout is a lot easier than standing in the middle of the intersection and pushing cars also. So it's, in the worst case scenario, I still think a better option than what we have today from a stop sign standpoint.
Okay.
Paula.
I mean, that's, okay.
Paula's next.
Thank you. So I think the other thing, the concern, just to follow up on, because before I get to mine, is that there is concern about the space taken by a roundabout. I think we talked about this at the December meeting, that there's really not more space taken up by a roundabout because you're eliminating turn lanes. And I think that was the concern of some residents, correct?
Correct, yep.
Thank you. So I think when we tabled this on, in December, I think some of us were concerned about, is there a way to somehow narrow the overall footprint? Some of the things that I was asking about in the other project. And so, by doing things like Three Rivers has done, which is eliminating some boulevards or narrowing shoulders or things like that, has there been any movement kind of in that direction? I think that, kind of what we talked about is there a way to kind of think about this in another way to kind of reduce that width print, for want of a better word? Especially regarding some highly impacted properties. So I guess that would be one of my questions, and have we documented some highly impacted properties? Because I've kind of gone out and walked a few, so if you can talk to the first one, since.
Yeah, so I talked through what the typical sections would be of that 6-foot boulevard, 8-foot trail. I would say we've gone through several different iterative processes to narrow that boulevard in some of those impacted properties, trying to keep it, a boulevard where we do have room, but then narrow it down where we don't have room. There are a few areas where it does get really tight. Near Scenic Heights it gets tight. Some of the areas just west of Wing Lake are tight. And so there will be some impacts there, but we've reduced it down as much as we can from a lane width standpoint, from a boulevard standpoint.
So that's good. So how much narrower is it going to be now than when we saw this on December 3rd, or are we looking at the same project?
Most of those, there are probably a couple areas, but mainly what you saw on December 8th, that concept included a lot of that narrowing already.
So my concern is that, if this was view shed, that would be one thing. There's a couple of properties and that literally.
So, Paula, I'm going to interrupt you. I think we're just going to deal with questions, and then we'll move on to kind of answering the questions on the.
I am asking a question.
Oh, okay. I thought you were giving a comment. Okay.
No. So there's a couple of houses that don't have a backyard at all because they back up right up to the wetland. And then their driveways, the way the previous plan, it seemed like it was really literally going to go almost within 20 feet of their front door. Is there any way to mitigate that? Is there anything foreseen for those? It's one thing losing trees, we can replant trees, but some of those, I'm concerned if there's a way to do that, because some people are trying to sell their houses and aren't being able to do it right now. Other people are relying on those houses, their fixed income, and being able to sell those houses to support themselves going forward. And given that on some parts of the northern part, we're not having a trail to protect natural resources, is there a possibility to do that for these few highly impacted houses where literally it's almost going up to their front door and they have no backyard.
Yeah, in not knowing specifically where those are, seeing them, I would say we're always iteratively trying to reduce impacts as much as we can. Those are impacts typically with trees. You know, working all the way actually through construction, even if we show a tree on the plan, doesn't necessarily mean we take a tree if we can work around it. From a location standpoint, that gets, I guess, difficult to whether, you know, if the trail's there, the trail's there. You know, could we look at, you know, we're sharpening the pencil at this point. You're talking a foot or two, not necessarily, you know, 10 feet. So does that you know, does the field change for somebody that has a trail in their front yard? Does a foot matter? And so, yeah, we're constantly sharpening the pencil, but I don't, we haven't looked at necessarily removing certain segments of trail, more from a consistency standpoint.
Right, yeah, I understand, but I'm just saying
Yeah.
there's a precedent there, correct? Because you're not doing a trail on the north side at one part because of natural resource
Sure.
issues, correct? Okay, thank you.
Kimberly, you had a question?
No, I did not.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? So let's try to tackle these, what the staff wants of us, and I would add a third prong, which is, that Havenwood section as well. We probably should give some insight too. So first of all, I think the primary question we have to ask is, does council support a trail on both sides for this project? Is there consensus on that?
I support the trail on both sides of the, I mean, because I feel like, I mean, what you said about people may come back later, or you've seen people come back, I can see why someone would come back to ask for trails on both sides. And then I do remember there was comments about, you know, trying to make sure people are safe as they're crossing. You know, you have to go walk up a mile or half a mile to cross over. And I'll just say, I just support it. I'm not gonna, yeah.
Thanks, Kizzy. I'm gonna go over to Kimberly and work my way down. Kimberly, do you have a perspective?
Yes, I also support trail on the both sides. As a cyclist, there have been times when I've chosen to ride on a busy road rather than ride on the opposite side of the road where the trail is, because it's more difficult to get to where I'm actually trying to be when there's not a trail available, and crossing the busy roads. A lot of times, trail access, you can't get to where you want to get to easily, and it's dangerous trying to cross that road. It's more dangerous trying to cross that road. So for safety aspect for both pedestrians and cyclists, and then I also don't want to delay the project.
Right. Patsy?
Yeah, I would agree that I would support both sides, and mostly because, you know, for delaying, I don't want to delay it. And also, we've seen decisions being made, and then years later, I can see people coming back and saying, where's the north side of that trail? So I support both sides.
Excellent. Paula?
Yeah, I think in normal times, I'm having trouble with this. I would agree that a trail on both sides for most of it makes sense. I also am worried about the tyranny of the majority. I hear what you're saying about public engagement, and I appreciate all that was done and everything. But we have several properties that are going to be seriously impacted. And think about if that was your mom, your sister, your dad or uncle or aunt, who is looking at their life savings and everything they have, that's their main asset, and they're depending on that to sell and be able to live on. And for us to just say, well, I mean, I get it, it's public safety. I am just asking that we find a way, whether we, you know, offer to buy them out, if this is a $30 million project for these people, and I understand precedent, or we find a way you know, to help these people by not having a segment in this stretch, if it's possible. These are people that are butt up to the wetlands. They have no backyard, and they're gonna have a trail 20 feet from their front door. And they're not gonna be able to sell their houses. And there's other parts of Minnetonka Boulevard, of 101, that do not have trails on both sides, including in front of my house. So I have to cross a very busy street in order to get across. My kids could not cross safely. These are the things that sometimes, you know, happen, and I get that you take one for the team, but it's not something, you know, because there's wealthy people on my block who didn't want their front yards taken, and they could put pressure on, and that's what happened back then.
Okay, tell it, Paula.
So, you know, I'm just asking us to think about some of these residents who are our neighbors who are going to be severely economically impacted. Yes, we have the majority for whom it's not a big deal and who want this, but how are we going to take care of these people who this is their one main asset? So I would, you know, strongly encourage either we find a way to make them financially whole by buying them out, or we figure out a way to extremely narrow that trail in front of them, no, you know, boulevard, very narrow trail, or we cut out that segment.
Deb?
I found the images that Phil was showing very helpful to illustrate how the trail construction can be massaged to fit the space available and minimize the impacts of people. And I feel very strongly, similarly to Paula, but I also I mean, you're expressing how difficult it is to get around because there isn't the trail segment on your side, and so there is both sides on this issue, and you do have the whole neighborhood to the north that would be impacted with not having trail sections in certain places. I have very mixed feelings. I think I struggled with it since December 8th when we first talked about it. And I've been dreading the conversation, but I think ultimately, as long as we can minimize impacts and really work with the county, because if we aren't asking them to change their policy, I really expect them to work really hard with us to meet the needs of our community and the people that live on that street. I don't know if buying people out, but maybe there are some things that we can do to make some of the most impacted residents less unhappy and less impacted. So I'm coming down on both sides. I also feel like there is just going to be tremendous tree loss, and again, I really want to make sure that we are maintaining the feeling that we are a tree city, and I want that boulevard feeling where there are trees hanging over the trails to keep them shaded and prevent the urban heat island, because this is really going to change two major roadways in Minnetonka, and I want to make sure that it still looks and feels like Minnetonka.
Great. I'll weigh in briefly. You know, I was very, very conflicted on this in December. Some of that is coalesced for me in that we've received some input from people that I thought were going to provide input to the other side, which is save that money and continue connections in other parts of the city. And I'm hearing a lot of support throughout the community for trail on both sides. Obviously sensitive to the impact of individuals, and I want to be, I agree with, I think Deb said it very well. What can we do to reduce those impacts? However, always think about what is read during the planning commission meetings, which is balancing the rights of individuals versus the, safety and security of the community as a whole. And this is one of those instances where, you know, there is a sacrifice. There's a sacrifice when a trail goes through. People on Baker Road are experiencing that. You know, there are a few very small lots on Hopkins Cross Road that experience that too, very, very small lots. And in fact, you know, I appreciated Bill including some of those. The way the trail has been developed there, I think did minimize some of the impact, and I was really heartened, and frankly, I think those residents were surprised by how they were able to make it fit in. And so I recognize that there can be a sacrifice, you know, where many of us live on arterial streets and have or are going to have trails through what we consider to be our yards, but really is the right of way. So I think given the minimal financial, you know, relatively speaking, impact of having the trail on both sides, which was my, you know, biggest concern, I'm comfortable going forward with this project. So with that, I think staff has the direction they need on that piece of it, but we do owe, unless I hear otherwise, one little piece, which is regarding that Havenwood. But I'm just gonna keep the floor for a second to share my input. I'd like to see that piece complete. I think the cost is, you know, relatively speaking, not gonna break the bank. I'd like to find a way to get better cooperation from the property owner. I understand that that has been a hurdle that could bring some of the cost down. So to the extent that maybe we could leverage the input of the residents of Havenwood to help us get some movement on the from the property owner where the trail needs to go, I would love to see that. So that's my input, and I'll let, if anybody else has any perspective on Havenwood, Kizzy, go for it.
I was just gonna say I also support what Rebecca just said. I know I've talked to residents several times, and there's been several emails in regards to this. And I think it's just a small ask for, you know, this Havenwoods is a senior citizen building, and I think it's just a small ask so that seniors can be able to also walk across the street safely, and so I support it.
This is Deb, and I'm also supportive. I do start getting a little uncomfortable because there are people in my neighborhood that want a little section on Orchard Road to connect with the trail that's being built on Baker Road, and so there are these little like special dispensations that people are asking, and that's, you know, safe route to school type of thing, and I think it's number 49 or 140. It's way down the list, way further down than the one that we're talking about, but it's the same kind of, you know, really dangerous narrow road with no place for kids to walk, and the school's right there. So I get a little uncomfortable making, you know, changing the order of things. That said, there's a library across the street. Some of those neighbors are going to be able to make it to the library without getting in a vehicle. So, I mean, those are the kinds of, it's a minimal cost, and I totally agree with Rebecca about, let's see if we can put a little bit of pressure on the property owners to help us, do us a solid here and do the right thing, so, yeah.
All right, do we have what we need on that, Mike? Will?
Yeah, excuse me, yes, I think so, Rebecca, unless there's concern. I'm not seeing concerns here from the council on what's been said, so I think we have good direction on that, Mayor. I would just say, I look at Julie back there as well, that we've been we as staff have been trying for years to get that easement from the abutting property owner, and Julie's been a part of those conversations too, along with our engineering staff, and it's been hard because I think part of it is the owner of that property is not from Minnesota. They're not part of the community. I think is it Boston. I think they're like live in Boston, so they're not tied to the community. So they're not compelled to overly cooperative, but we will try to see what we can do again. But I wouldn't bank on too much assistance from them.
Okay, all right,
So-
fair enough. All right, well, thank you. Thanks, everybody, and Will and Phil and the rest of the team that's there. Thank you for your patience with us on this. I think it was a useful exercise. I'm sorry for the consternation I know it caused, so thank you very much.
And then, Mayor, just want to make sure, just want to summarize real quick. So going back to Excelsior Boulevard, based on the conversation, what I heard from council was support for the trail on both sides. I think staff then also understands there are properties that are impacted. And I think as noted by staff, as we always do with any project, we work really close with neighbors, property owners on those impacts to make sure those are lessened. I think a good example is going back to the Tonka Woodcraft project. That was a 2-year project where we had hundreds of properties impacted. Our staff was fantastic in working with property owners on trees and how bushes were going to be impacted and where sidewalks and curb lines would go. And so that's what we do. And so I think Phil had mentioned that that's our intent here too, is understanding which properties will be impacted and working with them on how to make sure those are lessened.
Great. Thanks, Mike.
And
All right.
Okay.
One.
Nope, I think that's it.
All right, so
Thank
then
you.
we will move on to the next item, which is 3B, Ward 2 City Council vacancy determination for scoring, review, and selection for interviews. So, Mike, are you gonna start and hand it off to Miranda?
I think we'll just have Miranda jump right in, if that's okay.
Do we need to confirm that the council wants to make these selections now, that make sure that we're not running afoul of open meeting? I understand that there doesn't seem to be an appetite for a subcommittee, is that right?
I think. So Rebecca, I think maybe what I'd recommend is Miranda will kick it off. I think she has like an opening slide or so that kind of tease up what you're asking. So I think in Miranda's tee up, we'll get to, I think, the very first major decision on this, and that is which process to use.
Excellent, all right.
Thank you.
Miranda.
Thank you, sorry, I was getting the PowerPoint up. Oh yeah, thank you. That works. All right, Mayor Council, thank you. So for the action items tonight, we usually end with action. I'm gonna start with action just because there is decisions to be made, which is determining the process for selecting candidates for the interview. So either by creating a subcommittee or by discussing candidates live in this meeting, and we'll go through what that will look like on both sections. So council has a full scope on what we would do on both before we make the decision. And then at the end, we'll discuss the interview format and the selection criteria for the appointment process. I'm gonna go this route. Maybe. There we go. So just some background, I'll be quick on this. On January 12th, the council considered the special election versus appointment, and council directed staff to proceed with the appointment. Again, on January 16th, we did open up the applications and all the public notification began. It was pushed in a variety of areas. Especially what I want to point out is the Community Connection newsletter. That goes to all apartment complexes in Minnetonka. That is hosted by our community development staff. That was pushed out as well. On January 26th, council reviewed the timeline and provided feedback. Applications closed last Wednesday, February 4th at 11:59 p.m. We did have an application come in at 11:58 that evening. So people came in right up until the deadline. And we received 20 applications. Every application that came in, our city clerk did go through each one, and she verified that they lived in Ward 2. We actually had 22 applications, but 2 individuals did not live in Ward 2. So we verified that. Our city clerk called those individually and let them know they did not live in Ward 2. So those candidates are both aware that they're not part of the process. Must be at least 21 years old and be an eligible voter. And then again, we're on that March 6th deadline. So council direction, mayor, here's where we'll have to make a decision. So again, we did receive 20 applications that were eligible. And again, all of them met the minimum eligible criteria. So 2 choices this evening. So does the council wish to form a subcommittee or select finalists for interviews during this meeting? If we do a subcommittee, I have a Minnetonka mug back here with all 6 names in there that we can draw to determine the 3 that would be on the subcommittee. If that is the decision that is made, we'll draw those names and we'll move on to the next agenda item. And then during that February 10th, which is tomorrow through February 17th, that subcommittee would meet. Give Eric and I back the names that you wish to interview, and I'll reach out February 18th or sooner. If we choose to do it in this meeting, what we would propose as staff is we created a Mentimeter. The Mentimeter has 1 through 20 on it. I did give each of you a list of candidates 1 through 20 and a name next to it. They're at random order. I just randomized it. And we would put the Mentimeter code up. We would have council indicate their top 5 choices. Once everybody's in, I would then open the Mentimeter and we would see if there's any consensus. Depending on what that consensus would be, if we would need to narrow down the scope, I do have a summary ranking sheet ready to go where I would plug in the numbers and we would see then at that point who would rise to the top. My understanding is council is wishing to interview up to 5, and so that may happen in the Mentimeter, that may not. We do have that way of narrowing it down for discussion to happen in this room. And then applicants selected for an interview will be notified as soon as we know. So if we know tonight, I will let applicants know tomorrow whether selected or not selected. Otherwise, I would just wait for the subcommittee to hear. To this point, unless they've reached out, candidates have not been communicated with. So as part of the interview, when they applied, they got a kickback, letting them know a couple of details. And so there's been no communication since then. So I would do that then following this process. And Mayor, that's where I would turn it back to you.
Okay, great. Well, let's just do this and find out where people sit. We'll go the opposite direction this time. So, Deb, what approach do you prefer?
I've struggled with this. I sort of, maybe the Mentimeter. I mean, I've studied the candidates and there's an embarrassment of riches, but there's also some obvious folks and then people that are less. So I feel like we can get there. I also feel like even if we just have 5, I felt like 1 hour. This is a really important appointment. This is the economic engine ward.
Let's pause on that because I think we're going to talk about in a minute the process.
Okay.
And if it seems like we want, if we need more time or something, we can talk about that. But let's figure this step and then Miranda's got more for us.
I think you have my feedback on that.
All right, Paula?
Kind of agnostic on it. Mentimeter's fine. I think there's value in having a subcommittee doing it, especially those who are more familiar with some of these individuals. We've got a few people here who have served on boards and commissions, so I'm torn. So since I'm agnostic, why don't you keep going and I'll kind of try to figure it out.
Subcommittee.
Okay.
I'd like to do the Mentimeter.
Okay, and Kimberly?
Well, it's just as a matter of time. Like I don't want to spend all night here.
I don't either.
And for me personally, like just I don't have anything ranked now, and like reading it on the iPad and trying to get it, it's a little bit clunky for me. So like I want the input of everybody, but also I guess I'm kind of leaning towards subcommittee and maybe if I'm not a subcommittee member, just trusting that my fellow council people would make some good choices for the top 5 candidates.
So I'm hearing 2 subcommittee, 2 Mentimeter, 1 could go either way, which means I have to decide.
Well, I can chime in now. I think given what the remarks of my fellow council members, I would say probably go with subcommittee.
Okay, and I came into the day thinking subcommittee, but then was ready to go either way. I trust that there are a few people that we probably all would put on our list to want to interview. I think the subcommittee will do that. So is there anybody, it sounds like we've got subcommittee.
Yes.
Is there anybody that wants Miranda to pull your name out of contention for the subcommittee, doesn't want to do the subcommittee?
Can I ask a question, like, what's the time commitment on the subcommittee? Like,
I would say it'd be like an hour-long Zoom meeting or meeting in person, to go through, talk about the applicants and pick. That's what I would envision.
Okay.
I'm happy to help coordinate that, Mayor, and schedule a room to use or schedule the Zoom, or I can be a middle coordinator on that as well.
Okay. So it would just be an hour, would you say?
It's sort of up to the subcommittee, given
It's
the.
20 candidates, so,
Right.
I mean.
So I'm just saying I have a job, so I
Right.
can't.
But, like, you would have enough time now that, like, if you say we're meeting on Wednesday, that I could go through all the stuff and have my ranking done and come in ready to.
Yeah, I know.
Which I don't have that all
Or
done
meet
right now.
on Saturday, maybe, you know, if that's easier for people.
Okay.
But let, you know,
All right, let's just draw.
And,
Yeah,
I-
let's
and-
just-
and just to reiterate for the group, said this at the last study session meeting, but the subcommittee, once drawn, the subcommittee would be conducting this as a group of less than a quorum of the council.
Right.
And so they would be doing it without input from those that are not selected to avoid the
Sure.
serial open, implications of the open meeting law through communications that add up to a quorum. So just so that everybody's aware, those selected for the subcommittee would be making the decision on behalf of the group. And this is just the interview pool.
Right.
Can I have one follow-up to that? So we don't get to discuss here then if we do the subcommittee, we forego that for the subcommittee? Okay,
Yeah.
got it.
That's correct.
Just wanted to make sure I understood.
Yep.
And Rebecca, I would just add to the question on timing, the task of the subcommittee is to take that list of 20 and determine who you want to interview.
Right.
So it depends on how much prep work everyone does on the subcommittee and how fast you are at coming in and sitting down and filtering through those apps and reaching a consensus.
And there's, foundation for options. The subcommittee, I think, could figure out a process that would help them
You know
narrow
who I'm
down
talking
maybe some
about.
choices. So, okay, nobody wants their name removed from the option to be on the subcommittee. No pressure. If nobody's gonna judge you if you don't wanna be on the subcommittee.
You know what, I don't. I guess I'm
Okay,
not gonna
that's
take
what
the
I
time.
thought.
Sorry.
Okay.
I did study them. I know who I want, but.
Well, and that's why I wanted to
But I
mention
just
it earlier.
can't.
I think we all know who we want.
Okay.
Okay, enough, we can't talk about it. All right. So, remove Kathy's name and then if Sarissa or Miranda could pick 3 people after Patsy's name is removed out of this.
Hold on, names.
There you go.
I just,
We
we
can
can
blame
shuffle,
you.
I'm shuffling.
Paula? Should I stand up?
I just want, you can see it if you look in, so I'm trying to avoid you looking in.
Kizzy? Rebecca?
All right,
Okay.
there we go. I'll reach out to the 2 of you and we'll find a time that works for everybody to sit down and go through this.
All right.
Great.
Mayor, I do have a few more slides if I may.
Yep. Go
Not
on,
about
go ahead.
not about the candidates. So just a quick few next steps. So Wednesday the 18th would be the last day I could know who the candidates are. So those in the subcommittee, just because the packets due, I do need to know by that day so we can contact the interviewees. The next item is, I think, hitting on what Deb talked about. So February 23rd, we do have a special meeting slated for 5 p.m. You do have a 6 p.m. council meeting that night. If you go with 5, I don't think an hour is going to be enough, because during that meeting what has to happen is we'll do the interviews in here, and then at 5:40ish, hoping we could wrap up in that time frame, council would go to the Grays Bay room to eat. Staff would remain in this room. We do have to tally the results that evening. And then the council has to reconvene in this room, and we have to announce the winner that night. That would all have to happen prior to the 6 p.m. meeting.
Can't.
So
How long are the interviews gonna be?
Well, that's what I was gonna mention. I think
Yeah.
it's up to so the subgroup's gonna determine how many you're going to interview. I think staff would recommend 5. The subcommittee can decide on 3, you can decide on 8. It's really up to the subcommittee how many you wanna interview. Just from an HR perspective, we would staff would recommend 5 is a good number. Probably a half hour each. A half hour would give you 5 questions, maybe 6, depending on how fast people move through them. So you're gonna have five questions.
That's 2.5
half hour
hours.
each to get through that. So if you interview 5, that's
2.5.
hours. Plus you need some time to do the
Scoring.
back-end scoring.
Yeah,
So
and I
whether
was really
that's-
concerned about that earlier. And this is so important to get it right. I don't want to do it fast. I feel like our
Can everybody
input's already.
start at 3 o'clock?
I'll do whatever we need
I
to
was
do.
I was thinking to start earlier. I was
Well, remember, we've got candidates who are gonna have to come in too,
Right.
and so we wanna be sensitive to not having them have to take an entire half day off work. But, you know,
Can we do it on a different day and
Yeah,
then
that's what I was
announce?
gonna ask.
Can we do it on a different day and then announce?
We could definitely send out a doodle poll, right? For interviews, you mean?
For interviews. Yeah, could we do it
It's gonna be a long day,
before
like,
the
we have
February,
to
before February
Do the
23rd?
interviews, do the selection, and go into meeting.
I mean, just, it would, depending on scheduling, might require calling a special meeting on another day. You could, start earlier, special meeting on another day, some combination of both.
And then, that's one issue for me, and if we're talking about process, another issue is going over the questions.
let's decide on time first. Let's just tackle one issue at a time. I appreciate that I wanna get to it, but I wanna try to see if we can settle on. So we think we need 2.5 hours. I think we could do the interviews in 20 minutes. I think that's what we've done in the past. But we probably need at least 2.5 hours. So do we wanna get there early? Do we wanna start at 2 o'clock on the 23rd? Is that even possible? 1. Or do we wanna try to look for another day? And start, say, at 4 o'clock, knowing that we'll go probably until 7.
I'm gonna look at my schedule.
I'm fine going another day.
Okay.
I think that's gonna be, we'll be at our best selves if
Yeah.
we can and make good decisions both for the interviews and for the subsequent city council meeting.
Yeah, I agree with Paula on that.
Okay, so,
Now we'd have to pick the day.
We
yeah.
we can send out a doodle
and I
poll
think
too.
your schedule
Um,
might be-
If the subcommittee would wrap up by the 17th, I need to give the interviewees maybe a couple of days' notice. And I can definitely send them an email tomorrow, kind of giving them an update on the process. We do also have President's Day on the 16th. And we would need to know the finalists by Thursday, the 26th, to get them sworn in on Monday. So we could certainly look at,
Well,
So the 20th or the 24th seem to be the options, right?
or the 25th, I think would work too.
That's the state of the city. and
Oh,
we're
that's
not gonna
right,
do
you're
that.
right. You're right. I forgot about that, I'm sorry,
Oh,
Mayor.
come on, Rebecca, during the
That's
State of the
okay.
City.
I'm putting my foot down on it.
I'm sorry, Mayor, I forgot about that.
so what are the options again? I'm so sorry.
20th and the 23rd or 24th.
So Friday the 20th?
Or Tuesday the,
Or Tuesday, the 24th.
That can't happen. What about 23rd?
We
That's
have a
the
city
council, that's this meeting, that's the.
Isn't that
council
the
meeting.
President's Day? No, that's the
I'm-
16th.
The 16th?
Friday's always good for me. I know. I mean, that just Mondays and Fridays work always better for me. 'Cause I
Friday
work
would
from
be
home.
fine.
20th is,
But-
wait, what is this?
I get it.
Let's see my calendar. Oh, yeah. 20th would be okay for me as well.
And again, keep in mind, we're gonna be asking candidates, we're not gonna have staff stay past regular business hours on a Friday, so we're gonna be asking candidates to come in the middle of their workday.
Like at 2.
Oh.
Yeah, so I mean,
Well, so could we have the 20th and then have the 23rd option available for if there are people that can't make it on the 20th?
Eric, is that even an option?
That makes
So
sense.
we were talking through dates.
Oh, yeah, the
ignoring me.
20th or
So
the 23rd if they can't
Could we
make it.
have
That sounds
schedule it
good.
for the 20th, but then have the 23rd time available if there are people that can't make it on the 20th, which is a Friday?
That sounds good.
Yes, I think you could do that. Yep.
Do we wanna tentatively plan for that, Miranda, and
Yep.
see what the logistics look like?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And of course,
Otherwise, I think the fallback is gonna have to be just to do early on the 23rd if we have, as early as we need to, I guess.
I mean, the alternative too is if the subcommittee's work was concluded prior to the 17th, and then it adds in a few more days to work with there, and it's just accommodating. We're thinking if the last day we're notified of who we should contact to schedule is the 18th, that's where it gets a little tight with their schedules as well.
We could always go back and just do Mentimeter and be done tonight.
I guess, does everyone else have 24th okay? Does everyone else, would the 24th work for everyone else?
Let me see.
Maybe.
At what time? Would it be at 2 o'clock still?
I can make it.
No, wait. Would it be 2 still?
On the 24th?
No, we could go later because
Yeah,
it's
it could
not
be a little
a
later,
Friday.
but
I'm just picking if we have any other city meetings that night.
I can make the 24th work, I can make the 23rd work, I can make the 20th.
What happened to the 23rd? Why did you say that?
Council
That's
meeting
our
day.
council meeting.
She was just saying the 20th is a business day for people. I don't have to work that day, but
I have an EENR NLC meeting at, I think, 3 o'clock on the 20th, but I
Oh, the 20th.
probably miss it. It's a Zoom.
So maybe two suggestions, the 20th from like a 3 to 6 window.
Yep.
yeah, that would work.
24th, you could do a 3 to 6 also, or something like a 3 to 6, or a 4 to 7.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, any of those times, that'd be perfect.
That works for me.
I just think on the 20th, Mike, I have a hard time asking staff to stay until 6 o'clock on a Friday.
Well, thank you. We won't argue with that one.
Yeah.
We're working on Friday.
That's just.
I feel you. I agree. So let's just do Tuesday then, if that, I'll just,
For you for the timing Tuesday.
no?
I'll make it work.
So what
Wait.
time would it be on
It wouldn't
Tuesday?
work.
What's
She
the
said she'll
who
make it
is-
work.
So what's the concern on Tuesday?
We're good.
Just the timing.
Yeah.
Can we do 3
Getting everybody
p.m.?
notified.
I can't do 3 p.m. because I work during that hours. I mean, I can probably come in earlier, but like, can we, 4 o'clock, can I do 4? Can we do 4? 4 to,
4 to 7, that's what we're talking about.
she said 3.
That's fine, but
No,
we're
no, but
asking staff
earlier.
to come in and do another evening meeting,
That's 3.
is what we're asking.
She said
Yeah.
3 o'clock.
No, I meant earlier.
Yeah,
Not this time,
I-
another time, what you're saying.
Yeah, I don't like that either, Rebecca.
I say maybe go back to my split 2-day.
I like that idea that Kimberly had that Friday
and
and
Monday.
Friday or Monday. Let's do
Friday
that.
and Monday was good.
Let's do that.
That was a good suggestion.
Is that a good, is that,
Friday from 2 to 5, and whoever can make interviews 2 to 5 on a Friday. Then on Monday between
or the?
So
to
the,
6.
I'm
Yeah.
at home on Fridays and Mondays.
That sounds good.
But if I'm coming, I'll be coming from St. Paul.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's the
So
hard part.
We're
the,
offering 2 interview days.
Okay. Okay, so we'll do Friday the 20th from 2 to 5. Monday the 23rd, we want to be done by 5:30, 5:40-ish. So maybe
Maybe start at 4.
4 to 5:30?
Yep, so we're trying to push people to interview on Friday, and if they absolutely can't, then we'll have a couple slots open on Monday.
I'll do a 4 o'clock, a 4:30, and a 5 to ensure we're wrapped
Okay.
up by 5:30.
That works great.
So we can offer up to maybe, Miranda, does this work, like, we could offer up to 4 on Friday and 3 on that Monday. So that's 7 slots, and so for the subcommittee, if you end up picking, let's say, 5, it gives the candidates a little flexibility
Yep.
to pick a date pick a time that works for them.
Yep.
Great.
Yep.
Good. Thanks, you guys, for being flexible.
Yep.
Thank you.
I will give candidates an update tomorrow on that one. So thank you all, council, for that. Moving into then Monday, March 2nd, we do have a 6 p.m. study session that evening. So we'll do a 5:30 special regular council meeting in the council chambers. There will be one item on that special meeting notice, and it will be appointing that individual into the seat. We'll conclude the meeting. Eric will be ready to swear them in. We'll have IT in the back. We'll be ready to go. So we'll get them then ready to go for that March 2nd meeting, which will come in here and have our study session. And with all of that, we meet a deadline of March 6th. So interview format. So I did go back, or I have been going back to this whole process and looking at the 2018 appointment, which I think was yours, Shaq, as well as the 2019 appointment process, and have been comparing notes. Both of those processes followed this prior appointment interview. So candidates were asked to wait outside of the interview room. So we would put them in a separate room. And then interviews were conducted individually at assigned time. So we'll have individuals sign up, like we talked about. We'll have those after waiting in another room. We'll coordinate that as staff. And then again, a standardized list of questions was used. That list of questions that was used is in Granicus for council to view. It was listed as a private item. With that, those interview questions, different from what we do with boards and commissions, were not made public to the candidates prior. So candidates were not able to prep for those questions. They were not given to the candidates prior. And unlike boards and commissions, you can kind of sit through the interviews. That was not allowed in that process either. During those processes, council was given a standard list of questions like I did for this group, and council would give their feedback to me, and then I can coordinate the questions from there. So it was handled more on a private matter than public. So with that then, this council can change that process if you so wish. However, we just recommend having a standard list of questions, best HR practices across the board. Council, you may ask follow-up questions or clarifying questions. You may expand beyond those questions as needed, but we try and keep all questions the same to ensure that every candidate gets a fair shot at answering. And then if council does choose to keep the interview questions private and not public, I would just ask those interview questions be given to me by the 19th so I can get the questions ready for interviews, which may be the next day.
So,
All right. Deb, do you have a question or a comment on this?
yeah, it's a question, it's mostly a question and possibly a comment. So this morning I talked to Mike about, because this isn't a general like HR interview, it's a little different. So I had questions that I thought might be helpful, or sort of topics that weren't touched on. Those should be just sent to you
And send them to
and
me by email.
not discussed here.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So we're creating our own questions for
If
them
you
to
want
be.
to.
if you wish to, or if you have a theme, or if you have a topic you want hit on, send them my way.
Have you sent my
So-
questions to Miranda, or should I just go ahead and redo them?
Yeah, if you just want to send it directly to Miranda.
Okay.
HR has questions, so it's a matter of just having a government. If you have something that you think you would want to ask, send that, and Miranda will compile those and then further tweak the questions. We're gonna, again, for a half hour or 20 minutes, Rebecca, as Rebecca went, you don't have a lot of questions to ask, so you have to be very pointed in finding out what you want to ask. There's probably 4 questions, I'm guessing 4. By the time you sit down with someone, you get through the introductions, and so now you're down from 20 minutes, now you're down to 18. Usually with each question, even if you provide instructions to candidates that we're gonna have 4 questions for you, you've got 3 minutes to answer each question, you're right there at 20 minutes. If you even want, that gives you maybe a minute at the end to see if they have questions for you. So you're probably really limited to 4 questions. And so-
Again, I feel like we need more time, but okay, yep. But I do feel like there were just topics that are really important for city council members that weren't in suggested questions, so.
Yeah, please send them my way.
Okay.
Anything else on this? Otherwise, I think the process sounds pretty good. I think it makes sense.
Okay, then I think this is the last thing. I'm gonna move you, Rebecca, quick. Hold on a second. Again, this was a similar process to what was used a couple of years ago. Immediately following those interviews, again, the 23rd would be right then if we had that second day. Council would be given, it'll look like this. I'm gonna move you, Rebecca. And then ratings, and then a rank. So this is what was used the last 2 times appointments were made. It was a 2-pronged scale. So rating each candidate on a scale where 1 is the lowest, 10 is the highest. To ensure consistency, every candidate that interviews must be assigned a rating with the range, and more than 1 candidate can be assigned the same rating. And then over here is where council would rank them, and we would use these. There's another spreadsheet that's built to then funnel through the results to find the winner. So this was a process that was used back in 2018 and in 2019 for consistency, keeping it the same. I'm looking for feedback from council on that, Mayor.
Yes,
So-
okay. Any questions about, or comments about that?
I just want to make sure I'm understanding what I'm looking at. So I would rank, in this case, the 5, so you have 5 candidates that I would give a score of from 1 to 10 on how they interviewed, and then looking at those, then do I also go through and say, okay, this person's my first choice, this is second,
Correct.
et cetera? Okay, got it.
Okay, so giving a score first, and then you're gonna say who's your choice, 1
Yep.
through, okay.
My guess is, when I was reading through the notes, is the ratings was a way to help council members remember.
Determined between, if you have
Yeah.
like,
Yep.
yeah, got it.
Especially if you're gonna be interviewing on 2 different days.
Yeah, yeah, that will be helpful.
Okay.
And the second is what we truly use then as we're ranking them.
Okay.
All right.
makes sense.
Anybody else? Anything else on this? All right, well, excellent. I think we got a process. So thank you, Miranda, for your hard work on this. Moving on to the last item, 3E, March study session topics. Mike?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Just looking at what's coming up. Just pulling up my.
I have in here, Mike, for you.
Oh, thank you. So, next study session is March 2nd. So, what do you got? About four weeks from today. Really, it's a policy ordinance review night. And so, we'll bring forward a number of different items for council this conversation. One is just council policy. So, you have a council policy manual that hasn't been reviewed in a few years. And so, we'll bring that forward. Staff will have some suggestions for a couple sections in there for you to take a look at, and you might have others as you take a look at that. So it's just a nice refresher on that. Part of that then is having a conversation on whether there's support for looking at rearrangement of the regular meeting agenda. And I think I've had conversations with most of you in the last year about that. Really that kind of stems to looking at our business items. That's item 14. And I think as we've seen over the years, that's always down on the agenda and it gets later in the night. And so looking at maybe switching that lineup up around a little bit. So we'll talk about that as well. Substance regulations. So everything from cannabis to flavored tobacco to Kratom. Thank you. Kratom. In fact, one of our staff members had mentioned they were in Waconia and saw Kratom for sale here in the store. So that's getting some legs. So we'll talk about Kratom. And then Julie will have a zoning code rewrite update. And then along with that, a conversation on short-term rentals. So that is for March. Looking ahead to April, that's when we start getting into the budget. And so we'll start off with director presentations. And then with the Public Safety Master Plan implementation review, both our Fire Chief, Kevin Fox, Police Chief, Scott Boerboom, will come here and really just update you on just what's happened the last 3 years and do a kind of a relook back on what's with all the implementation with the Public Safety Master Plan. That's our first Q2 open meeting time as well. And I'll just briefly touch on May 11th. That's the big one on the budget kickoff, where we'll also bring in the marsh operations, rec amenities funding, priority-based budgeting, and then Peter will be back for the community survey results with Sarissa. So that's the next 3 months. Again, Council, these are, as you always hear me say, these are your study sessions. So if you want to bring anything forward, that's what we would want to hear at this time.
All right, thanks, Mike. Anything from
Kimberly.
council?
Kimberly does.
Yeah, so
Go ahead.
it doesn't matter. Anyway, I had tried to get this to come up earlier, but I would, I think that we're lacking a decision as a council for if we want to specifically communicate with the governor around eviction moratorium. And I'm not suggesting we discuss it tonight, but I would like to just know if we have a council decision one way or the other, and when communicating with residents and deciding individually how I'm going to communicate with with the governor and or our legislators. And Mike and I discussed it some, and he can talk about our options. I would recommend actually adding it to the city council agenda so that it's in February, so that if we decide we do want to communicate, then we could, communicate in time for it to affect the March, beginning of March rental dues. So that's, do you want to talk about the options?
Mike?
Oh, yeah, thank you. And so as Kimberly noted, I just want to highlight for the council, and I probably shared this with you at some point during our conversations here recently, that when it comes to conversations, like Kimberly is bringing up eviction moratorium. So for a council to have a conversation, the rules for study sessions and council meetings are different. And I'll turn to the city attorney if I misspeak or interrupt me, Eric. So for study sessions, when the agenda goes out on Thursdays, so like for tonight, when the agenda went out last Thursday for tonight's study session, by state law, that agenda is set. So when you come tonight, you can't deviate legally from the agenda. That's different than a regular meeting. So with a regular council meeting, item, I think it's 4 on your agenda, is approval of the agenda, and that's where staff will present, or I will present on behalf of staff, usually an addenda. And a good example is last Monday's addenda, where staff recommended the addition of a consent item, 10F I think it was, for the amicus brief conversation, or the amicus brief decision. So in a regular meeting, state law is different. So as a council, you can modify the agenda by motion, which is what happened last Monday. Again, so that's different than study sessions where it is cemented in. And so to bring forward a conversation, the council would have three options, and maybe the attorney would suggest others. That is, you can direct staff to add a conversation to the upcoming March 2nd study session. Now that's timing-wise probably not conducive because that's a month away. You can direct staff to put that on a regular meeting agenda, which is next Monday. No, 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
2 weeks, because next Monday's a holiday. So 2 weeks you could have that conversation in a regular meeting, or you could schedule a special meeting, like a special meeting for a study session where this would be the topic. So those would be the three options that you have. Eric, do you have anything to add to what I said, or? Okay. So those are your options. If you want to have a conversation, you would have to do one of those three things.
Okay, point of clarification, just so when you say that you direct staff, is that in the meeting itself or prior to the meeting?
So for tonight, the staff would want your direction tonight, like directing us to put this on next Monday's council meeting?
Okay.
In 2 weeks, right?
In 2 weeks, I'm sorry, in 2 weeks,
Right.
yeah.
Okay. So it
So
has
the
to-
question, I guess, is twofold. I'll summarize it and then take input, but is this something we wanna talk about? Is this the scope of what we wanna talk about? One, and then two, when do we wanna talk about it? So, I would say that it will, having this conversation would draw a lot of attention, so I would think about that perspective too. So, I guess, Kizzy, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I was gonna say I did talk to Mike earlier about the same thing. Mine was not so much about just the rent moratorium, but also just having some type of discussion around ICE. And I know that it will draw a lot of attention, but we continue to get I continue to get phone calls and emails, and so I do want to have this conversation because I think it's important for residents to be able to, state their concerns and bring it to the council because we continue to get these emails and calls.
Okay. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Deb, and then I want to say something.
I'm a little, I'm willing to discuss. I'm not, eviction moratorium. I do feel like we've all gotten, I certainly have heard from staff and housing people that, it's two-pronged. So the eviction moratorium is problematic if it's all by itself. So, I'm fine discussing it. I'm always fine discussing it, important, timely issues. Regarding ICE, I'm almost wondering if it's better for us to reach out to some community organizations and have them
host it,
organize something and go to that, because I feel like it's a little bit, I feel like the mood would be different. And so I feel like you, there's a lot to say. It's very hard to say it all. But in terms of eviction, I'm fine discussing it. I'm also fine not discussing it because I feel like we are all in conversations with the people that need to hear about it at the state level. And I literally talked to Patty Acom about it yesterday. And so anyway, I'm fine either way.
And part of my bringing it is, well, one, I know that we're all talking and doing the things. I don't feel like we have an overall decision as a council, and I would just like to have that, even if it's no, we're not going to. Just some of that, like when I'm talking to people, I'll say, well,
my colleagues feel like,
or we decided not to address it as a council, but this is what I'm doing individually, just
Right.
to have something
But we
to say.
discussed it.
But letting people know that, one, we're hearing them, and that we're taking it seriously, that it's important to us and important enough for us to have a discussion around it. For your thing, I think that's a separate thing, and I know in some cities they've done just a special listening session around ICE. And I think that's a conversation we could have, if that's something we would do. It would have to be like a special meeting, separate from the city council, because I don't think like, it just takes up too much time
Yeah.
to do
Yeah.
to do a city council meeting.
So I guess what
yeah.
I'm hearing is twofold, which is there's some appetite on the council to have an agenda item for a discussion about if we're going to take certain actions regarding ICE, particularly an eviction moratorium.
And a few
That
other
to me would be an opportunity to discuss if we wanna give staff direction on certain things, or if council wants to give me direction on, advocacy. To me, that's not a public hearing, that's a council business item.
Yes.
Is that right, Mike?
I'm gonna default to Eric. I think if it's on a regular meeting, if it's a business item, then Mayor, I believe you have discretion on whether you wanna take public comment on that. And so it's your discretion. And if it's let's say a special meeting where this is the topic, then of course, we don't take public comment at study sessions.
So I think it sounds like there's consensus, about wanting a business item to kind of just discuss various things related to Metro Surge or whatever we wanna label it. And potential action of the council we're not introducing an ordinance, we're not passing anything, we're talking about if there's something we wanna give staff direction on.
I would actually, sorry, Patsy, can I be recognized?
Sure.
Yeah, actually, that, something that I was gonna bring up tonight too is I'll bring it up again since I brought it up several times before, the idea of discussing, could be a place where we can discuss whether we wanna, pass an ordinance or pass any, proclamation or resolution.
And, well, I guess it's up to, like, my suggestion was to discuss the eviction moratorium specifically
And
only.
Yes,
So,
and I'm with you.
I don't
Well,
want
and I'm really hearing other people, Kizzy kind of maybe has different things she wants to discuss, Paula has different things
Right, and
that
then
she wants to
we were
discuss.
suggesting for Kizzy's, like, maybe having a separate meeting to discuss with residents.
Yeah, I mean, I'm okay, like, one of the suggestions that Deb made, I don't know if we could partner with some community organization to host something like that, that's fine, that's okay with me. I just want to have that space or give residents a space where they feel like they can have discussion and comments and we're listening to what they're saying. So I'm okay, even if we don't have it here, I'm okay with that. I was just asking about it.
So Kimberly, your ask is just specifically a discussion item, as to whether or not we wanna lobby or engage in promoting a statewide eviction moratorium
Yes,
as a council.
yes.
Okay. And I hear a different ask from Paula, so it sounds like you have support on the eviction piece. Paula wants to expand it to other action items. Do people want that, or do we wanna narrow it just to the eviction piece?
I feel like I personally would like to keep it just to the eviction piece for a variety of reasons, and part of it is for the same reason that I was suggesting, if we do something that's dealing with some of the broader issues, that the temperature in the community is heating up, and I don't know that we would be able to come to consensus on what would be helpful on the dais. I do feel like there's an appetite for some kind of listening session in the community, and I have heard from various experienced people that if community or faith-based organizations want to host something, it helps keep the temperature down. And if we want to, you know, have some of us or all of us be a part, and it's a public meeting, I believe, Eric, if it was a public meeting hosted by some host organization, we could still all be there, but I think it would change the tenor.
So that's a separate conversation that maybe we can have offline.
Yes.
About some options, and maybe that's something that Jace could help us facilitate. I'm not directing anybody to do anything, but it seems like we have some options on that. So, okay, Paul, I understand your position. I hear you, and I respect where you're coming from. I'm not speaking to you, but I think I know what you are asking for. Kizzy, the question is, Vic, you want a conversation and limit it to the eviction moratorium, or do you want to open it to other things? You know, Paul is talking about ordinances and resolutions.
For the ordinance and resolution, I think we can limit it to not do the ordinance and resolution conversation, because I just feel like it's like saying we're doing something, but to me we're really not, because it doesn't really mean a whole lot, and that's what I keep hearing. And so I don't want to do something that really doesn't do anything. If we're gonna do something, we got to do it. Like if we agreed to do the moratorium, we you know, that's the thing. Yeah.
Thanks. Patsy?
Yeah, I would want to limit it to the moratorium.
And Kimberly, I assume that's
Yeah.
where you're at as well.
Correct,
Okay.
yes.
All right, Mike, does that give you what you need on this?
It does, so we'll get this scheduled, and then I'll work with staff on what a report will look like. I assume I'll lean on Eric for some guidance on eviction moratorium and what that would look like.
People know
All
what I
right.
value, and I communicate
All
with
right.
them.
Well, and
They've heard
so
us
we-
on the dais, and they know what we value.
Okay, I'm gonna, unless there's something else regarding study sessions? Anything?
No.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, everybody. And that was a long, very dense agenda, so we got through it as efficiently as I think we could. And we will, see you all, see my subcommittee soon, see the rest of you. That, and we'll adjourn the meeting.